I presume the video is going, yes? All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Mayor Tom Stallard. It's 6 o'clock on the evening of February 16, 2021. The City Council for the City of Woodland is now in session. I would like to begin by reminding everyone that we're meeting electronically tonight pursuant to the Governor's executive order for dealing with the pandemic. That means if you'd like to participate in our meeting, and we welcome your participation, you need to check the agenda, which tells you how you could either call in, email to us, or of course, if you send a letter in advance, it would be read during our meeting. So we welcome your participation. Feel free to join in. With that, we'll move to roll call. And Madam Clerk, Ana Gonzalez, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. Councilmember Fernandez?
Present.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Present.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Present.
Mayor Stallard?
Present.
Thank you.
All right. We move to item C, the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight I'd like to call upon our city manager, Ken Hyatt, to lead us in the pledge. Ken?
All right, ready, pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ken. All right, so this is the time for public comment. So for any item not otherwise on the agenda this evening, if you have a comment you'd like to make, this would be the time to do so. Madam Clerk, do we have any indications of interest in speaking at this time?
I don't see any hands raised under public comment.
All right, we'll be calling for public comment on the various items through the evening. So if you have a late comment later on, we'll look forward to hearing from you. That brings us to communications from council and staff, and we'll start with, how about you, Council Member Landsberg?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to keep my comments short. We have a big agenda tonight. But in summary, on February 3rd, I joined Council Member Vega at the City County 2x2 meeting with Supervisor Sandy and Supervisor Barajas. Apparently, we haven't had one of these meetings in quite a while, and we're going to resume these meetings and make them eventful and make them fruitful. We had good discussions, Mr. Mayor, on topics that affect both the city and the county, including flood projects, cash treatment maintenance issues, commercial cannabis, and the effect on our city. So of course, the never-ending homeless issues that keep popping up. We addressed some annexations that would affect our city, as well as the effect of state legislation on the issues of homelessness and drugs in our city. I look forward to working with the county and with my colleague in resolving some of these issues and coming up with good solutions. On February 4th, I did attend the Homeless Executive Commission meeting. I received a presentation, an excellent presentation from West Sacramento, and how they use tax increment financing as a method for development in their city. I do recall, I think we touched upon that some time ago, Mr. City Manager, but perhaps that we should look at this as a method for development in our city as well. It's an excellent presentation, and it shows with success in West Sacramento how they've been able to develop housing projects with this particular type of financing. On February 10th, I did attend a special meeting of the Yolo County Housing Authority, where we met two new commissioners, one from Davis and one from West Sacramento. Our main topic on this particular special meeting was labor negotiations during this very turbulent time, as it is for local government. And the last thing is, last Thursday, I got my first COVID shot, yay. And I can't wait to get the next one. And that's it, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Council Member Landsberg. Next up, we'll have our newest council member, Tanya Garcia Cadena. Tanya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On February 4th, I started my orientations and I visited the Woodland Police Department and received my tour there. February 8th, along with Councilmember Fernandez, I toured Lower Cache Creek and got some information there On the 9th, I participated in the Tech Park presentation, which was very informative. And on the 10th, February 10th, I had my Public Works orientation. On February 11th, I toured the Spring Lake Fire Department and spoke with our fire chief. And today I met with community services. So I'm getting them all in, and I'm getting a head full of information.
Well, that's terrific, Tanya. Thank you so much for the good report. Councilmember Vicky Fernandez. Vicky.
Good evening and thank you. I again want to thank our city staff for the tremendous work that they're doing this last week, along with Tanya. Thank you to Brent for giving us a tour with Ken on the Cache Creek area. Also to Craig Locke and Christine Engel for their presentations on the Public Works Department and Community Services, and to their amazing staff who kind of keeps so many activities and functions of our city going. So thank you to all their work, and that's greatly appreciated. Also had the opportunity to participate in the Woodland Rights Project with my daughter and granddaughter. So that was a thoughtful activity provided by Woodland Rights through the Community Service Department, providing Valentine's for some of our seniors and city members who are kind of locked in because of COVID. So thank you to their efforts. That was a fun activity. And thank you to all those who have shared their emails and their concerns regarding several of the issues that are on tonight's agenda. So thank you for your input and your information. I appreciate hearing your views. Also attended the 3x2x2x1 with Council Member Vega on the 10th with city staff, member Ken and Christine Engel, with the Yellow County Superintendent, Woodland Schools, and Woodland Community College trustees, and Woodland Joint Unified trustees. So thank you for that opportunity to meet with them, and they had some concerns that we will hopefully address in the upcoming meetings, and some concern regarding COVID, which Ken will be discussing later. So maybe I'll ask or share that information at that time. But thank you for all the information I've been getting this last couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And now Mayor Pro Tem Myra Vega. Myra.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. So just to echo Councilmember Landsberg's comments on the 2x2 meeting with the county. This is a meeting that hasn't happened for some time, so I'm really looking forward to working together on issues of mutual interest. Shout out to Public Works and Community Services Department for a great department orientation, and just really want to call out all the great activities and how the Community Services Department has shifted to accommodate the COVID situation. So thank you for everything you do for our community members. On the 10th, I attended the 3x2x2x1 with Councilmember Fernandez. Nothing to add there other than, there's a lot of work to do and a lot of great collaboration. I'm looking forward to addressing some of these issues caused by the pandemic, and additionally some issues that are impacting the youth in Woodland. I also had the opportunity to do a site visit at Lower Cache Creek, and had an opportunity to receive a briefing and ask a lot of questions. So staff, thank you for your time and all the documents that you prepared for us, and taking time to answer our questions and give us a tour. Shout out Ken and team, wonderful community meetings for the Tech Park. I really, really appreciate all the engagement that the community showed, and I'm looking forward to continued discussions, and really wanted to call out the work that a working group led by Murray Levinson out of District 5 has put in over the past few years to look at this project and to give feedback. It's really appreciated. That'll conclude, Mayor Stoller. Thank you.
Thank you, Myra. For myself, I'd like to mention a few things. I toured the Perfect Union Cannabis Dispensary in Sacramento at their request. They have an application they'll be bringing forward in our community. I also am so pleased that Dignity Health commenced a vaccination clinic today at our community and senior center. It will be operating Monday through Friday and scaling up to 1,000 vaccinations per day. So that's going to help us a lot in getting people vaccinated. And by the way, I have my first 2 last week. UC Davis is exploring expanding their spit test COVID program to Woodland. For those of you who don't know about it, this is a very easy way to determine whether you are experiencing the disease or not, because you just basically spit into a vial. So it's called Healthy Davis, the program, and they're talking about expanding it to all of Yolo County. And we're hoping to be able to get some facility here where we can do that. It's quick turnaround as well. The Yolo County Transportation District met. It was a difficult meeting, but on a 3-2 vote, we've got $368,000 approved from funds that come in consequence of Woodland's population. They're called 5307 funds, and they'll be used to build cement bus pads on East Main Street, which will have handicap access. Now, these are important because 88 buses stop in the course of a day, and that stopping and starting just destroys the pavement. So when we repave the street, this is an effort to make that last much longer. A similar request for Gibson Road was not supported by the board. We also had a meeting of Valley Clean Energy. We're moving forward. We adopted a marketing plan. 91% of all eligible households in the county, in the 3 cities in the district and the unincorporated area are still in Valley Clean Energy. So we're happy about that. Woodland at 88% is the lowest of all the jurisdictions. I suggested that we target marketing to this community. Valley Clean Energy is also joining a new JPA that allows multiple community choice aggregators, groups like ours that basically buy and sell electricity, to collaborate on projects such as energy from wave generation that are too costly for individual community choice aggregators like Valley Clean Energy. It's a good idea. Also, tonight's agenda is 520 pages. I just mentioned that because I want to say thank you, colleagues. Everybody had to wade through it, and I know I was up till 11, and I heard others were working pretty late as well. I've asked if the staff could figure a way to create links for some of the longer attachments so we don't have to wade through them to find the staff reports. I also want to mention that this is Black History Month. We know we have a lot of work to do so that our Black citizens can feel as comfortable and as safe as anyone else in our community. It is good that our country and its communities like ours are thinking about this and open to constructive action. And as you'll hear later on, we've taken a step towards supporting our Asian and Pacific Islander members in our community and elsewhere that come to our community. The last thing I think I'll mention of my report is that we have 10 openings on city commissions and boards. If you're interested in serving the city of Woodland, would like to get more involved, go to our website, download the application and submit it. You can designate 1, 2, or 3 choices, see what's available. We have a seat on the Planning Commission, for example, right now. Mayor Pro Tem Vega and myself will be doing the interviews and recommendations to council who makes the final decisions. And for my mayor's minute, I'll give half a minute because it is a long agenda. February 22nd, Monday, marks the 150th anniversary of our incorporation as a city. One wonders if George Washington's birthday was specifically chosen for this action. I think about the hopes and dreams of those who founded and nurtured the growth of our community. California had only been a state for 22 years when Woodland was incorporated, and even less since failed gold miners gave up on mining and migrated down the Feather and Yuba rivers to what became Yolo County, which originally included what is now Colusa County. The rich soils and hard work produced fortunes reflected in Victorian mansions and highly decorated Main Street buildings. Let us commit to continuing their work as we proceed through this year. And now, Mr. Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my remarks brief this evening, reserving most of those for items later on the agenda. But I too want to acknowledge the time that our new council members took to go out and meet with our department representatives and understand the operations that they manage. I think the time is well spent and greatly appreciated by staff. And then also looking forward to this Saturday's council retreat and priority goal setting session. So Saturday all day session with the council. We'll be in person. We'll be exploring ways to accommodate virtual viewing of the session, but really intended to be an opportunity for the council to work together as a group and identify areas of specific alignment and priorities for the next 2 years. Quick glance at the long-range calendar coming up. The next regular scheduled meeting is March 2nd for the council. On that agenda, currently we have the presentation and consideration of agreement with Woodland Community College to establish Woodland College Promise Program, which will be a joint partnership with the City of Woodland as well as the community college to provide funding, to provide that last dollar to allow students who are graduating from Woodland high schools to attend community college here at no cost. So looking forward to presenting that to the council. Additionally, we will be hopefully presenting to the council some additional actions for the new homeless shelter campus to allow the next phase of that project to move forward, including the permanent supportive housing units. So that concludes my remarks. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. All right. That brings us to the consent calendar. Excuse me, we're going to go to presentations first. We have a very special event this evening, and that is we are going to honor a man thought to be perhaps, if not for sure, the finest athlete ever to come out of the city of Woodland. And how appropriate at this 150th anniversary of our city that we have this convergence and are able to take this action. I want to begin by thanking our colleague, Rich Landsberg, who coordinated with the phenomenal Dustin Pedroia to make this evening's commemoration possible. So without any further from me, Rich, would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do see Dustin on the line there. Good evening, Mr. Pedroia. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of staff, and all those listening in tonight, I have the great honor of presenting a proclamation in the city of Woodland to one of Woodland's own homegrown talents. We are often called upon to do these proclamations, and sometimes, as you know, we skip over some of the lines to cut it short a little bit and make sure that we get the honored guest. But I can't do that tonight. This man has done so much in his career as a professional baseball player that it is incumbent upon me to read the entire proclamation. And even in doing so, I won't even capture his full career. So if you'll indulge me, Mr. City Manager and Mr. Mayor. This is a City of Woodland proclamation honoring Dustin Pedroia. And bear with me, Dustin, because there's a lot of whereases in here, okay? Whereas Dustin Pedroia was born in Woodland on August 17, 1983, to Guy and Debbie Pedroia. And whereas Dustin, at a very early age, displayed such baseball talent and played Little League, Babe Ruth League in Woodland, amassing tremendous recognition for his baseball skills. And whereas Dustin Pedroia attended my alma mater, Woodland High School, and played football and baseball, but his football career ended as a freshman quarterback after a hit from future All-Pro NFL linebacker Lance Briggs shattered his ankle. And Dustin, you probably remember that like yesterday, right? As a senior baseball player, Dustin compiled an amazing 445 batting average while going the entire season without a strikeout, and was chosen as the league's most valuable player. And whereas upon high school graduation, Dustin was the recipient of an athletic scholarship to play baseball for Arizona State University, where in his 3 years at ASU, never hit below 347 and had a career average of 384, starting all 185 games. But to help ASU recruit better pitchers, Dustin demonstrated his character by relinquishing the last 2 years of his athletic scholarship. Dustin was also named ASU On Deck Circle Most Valuable Player. And whereas Dustin was drafted by the Boston Red Sox in the second round of the 2004 Major League Baseball draft and was the 65th draft pick overall. During 3 seasons in the minor league baseball, Dustin batted .308 while playing second base and shortstop. He spent 2004 with the Class A Augusta Green Jackets and Class A Advanced Sarasota Red Sox, part of 2005 with AA Portland Sea Dogs. Those are great names, by the way, Dustin. And parts of 2005 and 2006 with AAA Pawtucket Red Sox. And whereas Dustin became the starting second baseman for the Boston Red Sox in 2007, winning the American League Rookie of the Year award, and was selected to the 2007 Topps Major League Rookie All-Star Team. And whereas in Game 7 of the 2007 American League Championship Series, Dustin went 3 for 5, including a double, a home run, and 5 RBIs to secure the Red Sox spot in the World Series. Whereas Dustin led off Game 1 of the 2007 World Series against the Colorado Rockies series with a home run, making him only the second player in history of Major League Baseball and the first rookie in history to lead off the series with a home run. The Red Sox went on to win their second World Series title in 4 seasons and the first World Series championship for Dustin Pedroia. And whereas Dustin shined both defensively and offensively during the 2008 regular season and was awarded the American League MVP, Gold Glove, and Silver Slugger awards, that season he hit .326 with 17 homers and stole 20 bases on only 21 attempts. He also had a great defensive season, making only 6 errors through 157 games. And I'm not done, Dustin. And whereas after 14 seasons, all with the Boston Red Sox, Dustin has retired as a player with the Boston Red Sox and from Major League Baseball. And whereas Dustin has also commendably represented our great city of Woodland as a hometown hero, and whereas Dustin has accomplished all of this while being a great role model for those young people who wish to emulate his great character and aspire to a similar level of athletic and professional greatness. And whereas as residents and officials of the city of Woodland, we have all benefited, Dustin, immensely from your dignified and proud representation of our city. Now, therefore, the city of Woodland asks all our city residents to join us in proudly honoring and celebrating Dustin Pedroia for his profound accomplishments and inspiring an example of commitment to excellence, and wish him and his entire family well in his retirement as a professional baseball player, dated February 16, 2021. And now I'm going to ask my colleagues to join me in saying a couple of words for tonight's honoree. I'm going to start with the mayor. Mr. Stallard, please.
Well, thank you, Rich. First of all, Dustin, thank you for being a especially good sport and suffering through the adulation. We know you don't seek recognition. Your actions speak much louder than our words. But we are proud of you, and forgive us if we want to hitchhike a little on what you've accomplished, because as you know, in a town like Woodland, people care so much. And I think about the people through the years who must have helped you at Clarkfield, at the high school, other places. I know your mom worked like a dog to get the weight room at the high school built so you could build those biceps, and other people could become more successful as well. So anyway, we're just real proud of you. Happy for you in your retirement, and wish you and your family all the best. You know, you're always welcome in our community. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. So Dustin, gosh, what an inspiration. You know, I hope that our youth and the community are listening, or they get wind of this. Gosh, I just congratulations and thank you for setting such a great example for all of our young kids in the community. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Well, congratulations, Mr. Pedroia, on all your excellent records and for representing your family and your community so well. We appreciate your commitment and dedication to the sport of baseball, and also I'm sure to your family, who I'm sure feels very proud of your career. Know that we appreciate and admire your commitment to excellence and dedication to your sport, and wish you and your family the very best, and know that Woodland will always appreciate having your historical career to remind our students and residents that even from Woodland, we can excel and reach great heights and achieve our dreams. So thank you for being an inspiration to so many of our young people and residents.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
So, Mr. Pedroia, I echo the sentiments. I have to say, I have a 14-year-old nephew who lives just outside of Boston, and he is so excited when they come to Woodland because that's where Dustin came from. And you've been a huge inspiration, and I just appreciate all that you've done. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Now, Dustin, I know you don't like doing this, but just a few words about what you feel about your retirement, what you look like in the future, and just whatever you have on your mind.
Well, first off, I want to thank everybody. I appreciate it so much. And I'm sure you guys all know I'm kind of a private guy, and I'm quiet. I don't do a lot of interviews and stuff, but I just want everyone to truly know that, you know, I wouldn't have done anything in my baseball career if it wasn't for where I grew up. You know, there's my best friends in the world still are from Woodland. They live outside of Sacramento. My kids, they're not big fans of me because I watch the Kings every game. Then they were born in Boston, so they're Celtics fans. So they tell me all the time they have 17 championships, and I'm like, well, I'll be around for the Kings first. Don't worry. But from playing Little League to high school to junior high to getting me to that level, there were so many people that had an influence, from teachers to coaches, obviously my parents, my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, everybody played a huge role in not only my baseball career, but my life. And, you know, I try to teach my kids. I have 3 boys. I try to teach them every day, you know, about the things that I learned growing up in Woodland and how to act, how to treat people. And that's, you know, hopefully later on as I get older, you know, I make more of an impact on people than I did, you know, without playing baseball. And that's my goal going forward in retirement is to make a difference in young people's lives, the way I was impacted. And that all comes from where I grew up. So I thank you guys for everything. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. And I look forward, you know, hopefully this, you know, the COVID situation gets over and I could get back home and start making a difference. But I really appreciate everything, what you guys said. It means the world to me.
Thank you, Dustin. And if you were here in person, we'd give you a standing ovation. But
thanks. Thank you, guys.
Anyways, but
right on.
Dustin, thank you for doing this. I know that you don't like doing this stuff, and that's cool. But thank you for taking the time out. And just make me one promise that we'll hope to see you again in 2025 when you are inducted to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Because I'm pretty darn sure you're going to.
Don't jinx it there, Rich.
We'll see you in about 4 or 5 years. All right.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much for that.
God bless you, Dustin.
Thank you.
All right.
That's it,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Landsberg. This brings us to our second presentation of the evening, and that's to learn something about the Freshman Leadership Academy. And we're pleased to have Monica Pena Villegas, Regional Assistant Director of the UC Early Academic Outreach Program, here to give us a very short briefing so that we're aware of the good work that they're doing. Are you on the line, Monica? I think you are. You're sharing your screen.
Yes, I am here. And in Fabian's place is also one of his colleagues from the Athletes that Empower YOLO. It's Claudia Angel, who's going to be co-facilitating with me. And so let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit of history in regards to the Leadership Academy. The Academy actually began in 2010 when Pioneer High School had partnered with our program, the Early Academic Outreach Program, to provide a cohort of incoming 9th grade students with English, leadership, strengths development, and college knowledge. Everything was going well, and then about 2018, the Academic Leadership Academy came to an end, and it was not held due to lack of funding. In 2019, because of the many calls that I had received from students and parents who were disappointed that the Academy didn't take place, I began looking for resources to bring it back. And that's when I had run into Council Member Enrique Fernandez and Xochitl Rodriguez, which was then acting mayor. And they were interested. I started talking to them about the Academy, and Enrique said, come talk to me. So in 2019, thanks to the partnership of the City of Woodland, Empower YOLO, and Pioneer High School that told me, if you can locate the funding, we'll give you the location to make sure this happens. We developed what we now call the Freshman Leadership Academy, which is a cohort of students from the 9th graders attending either Woodland and Pioneer High School. So this last summer, in collaboration with, and started, continues to grow here. So now we
Monica?
have, yes?
Monica, I just want you to know we have a really big agenda tonight. So if you can be as concise as possible, that would be so appreciated. Thank you. I apologize for having to do it, but we're loaded with items on our agenda.
Yes. So this last summer, we actually held the Freshman Leadership Academy virtually, and due to the pandemic, and it was a continuation of many entities that came together to make sure that it could take place. The City of Woodland actually was able to provide all of the 50 students with school supplies so that they could be successful in the virtual classroom and in the actual classroom if we were able to go back into the classroom setting. The Academy's main goal is to develop the students so that they are able to be successful 9th grade students, be able to graduate, become leaders, and know what all of their options are, not just in college knowledge, but also being able to participate within the community and know all of their different job opportunities. The Strengths Leadership Development allows the students to know what they're naturally good at so that they don't focus on the items that they're not naturally good at. The college knowledge allows the students to understand how high school and the courses that they take actually impacts them so that they could be much more successful. And I'll let Claudia take over at this moment in time.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you all for having us. My name is Claudia Angel. I'm here representing Fabian Iglesias today. And like we were saying, the life skills component, it was mainly for developing students' knowledge and skills in the many different topics to prepare them for their academic years, and also for lifelong success. Some of the topics that we offer our students this past summer was time management, note-taking, safe relationships, financial workshop by Travis Credit Union, resume building, job interview practice, and how to navigate high school. A testimony from one of our students. I can go back, Monica.
I'm sorry.
A testimony from one of our students. He or she said that this academy has helped me a lot with understanding the facts about college, jobs, and finances. I learned that it's not easy to do these things, but they can be worked through. Thank you for teaching me about high school and how to get good. Now we know that because of the pandemic that we're in, we couldn't have an in-person academy. And we're very thankful that we were able to have a virtual academy where we kept our students safe. For this upcoming year, we are ready to go whether it's virtual or in person. So we're very excited to have our academy this summer. And the impact of the program, some of the things after students came to our academy, the students demonstrated that they have an increased knowledge of CSU's and UCF mission requirements, also increasing plans to purpose higher education, increasing level of confidence in being able to identify and speak about their top 5 strengths, increasing confidence in being able to find a job, apply and interview properly, increasing level of confidence in being able to understand basic budgeting and financial literacy. Also, we're able to find that the average fall GPA for our FLE participants was higher than the average GPA of their student class. So most of our students or participants' GPAs were maintained or improved from 8th to 9th grade. And a large number of our students received a 4.0 or a 3.0 GPAs in their first semester of 9th grade. And do you have any questions?
Well, thank you. That really was concise. I appreciate your efforts to move it right along. Colleagues, are there any questions of our guests tonight on this?
I have one quick one.
Councilman Landsberg.
What are the numbers of participants from our Woodland schools?
So we actually we're able to provide seats for 50 students. So the goal is to have 25 students from that are going to be attending Woodland High, and 25 students are going to be attending Pioneer High. So total of 50.
Thank you very much.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Council Member Fernandez.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for your work and your effort to encourage our students to find success in high school and hopefully in college. So thank you for your work, ladies.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you. And we just did want to let you know that last year's class did earn 5 elective high school credits. So it's all with that effort collaboratively. I like to say it takes a village, right, to raise a child. And in this academy, everybody comes together because it can't take place if it wasn't for the assistance of everybody. And, you know, City of Woodland, it's everyone.
Thank you.
Mayor Stollard, I have a comment.
Yes, Councilmember Vega, excuse me. I can see you on
wanted to comment on just how comprehensive this program is. I think it's so important to teach the aspects of financial literacy and budgeting. It's so important. You know, I think that's something that really helps lay the foundation for raising responsible, independent adults. I'm really happy that you guys included in your program. So thank you, Monica and Claudia. Thank you for your presentation tonight and the work you're doing with our students.
All right. Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to thank you for your efforts that you've put in to take this online. With the pandemic, I know it throws everything off, and I appreciate all the effort and work that goes into doing something virtually. I know that's not easy, and that's great to see that you're able to continue it. It's a much needed program, so thank you.
All right. Well, bless you for coming tonight. Glad to have you. And we so appreciate what you're doing for the youth of this community. And we want to be good partners. And we do that through Summer at City Hall. And we're looking for more internships here at the city too. So any further comments, anyone? If not, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. that concludes the presentation. All right, thank you. We'll now move on to item G, the consent calendar. And this is items 4 through 23. And I believe one item's been removed from the calendar for tonight. Mr. Manager, could you comment on that?
Yes, that is correct. So there is an item that showed up on the original posting of the agenda as item 11 under consent, so G11. Under the new agenda that's been posted, that's now G12. That item has been requested by the applicant to be removed, and we'll bring it back at a future agenda.
Thank you very much. So all other items remain then?
That is correct.
Items 4 through 23, including the, okay. Then we have public comment on this. I suspect it's going to be favorable comments about our resolution for the Asian Pacific Islander support, supporting equality. And I want to thank Council Member Vega for bringing.
This is Iberia Genera. I'm a resident.
We're now going to listen to the public comments on the consent calendar, and I understand there are 15 of them. So we're just going to listen to what people have to say before we take up and vote on the consent calendar. Please proceed with playing the recordings of the comments.
Hello, this is Iberia Genera. I'm a resident of Woodland. I live on the north end of Woodland. I am calling regarding item number 8. I am appalled that our community, some of our community members, have been harassed because they are Asian. Please, we need to take a stand against these racist attitudes and behaviors. It's imperative that our city council take a strong stance through a resolution and monitoring of our police department so that they too are aware and take action against individuals who are at fault for these attacks on our Asian and Pacific Islander citizens and residents. Please do take action. I may be reached. I live on Woodland Avenue, and will call on another line with my phone number. Thank you so much for your stand against racism. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Irene Barbo. I live in Woodland. I am speaking on agenda number 8. I understand that have been racist attacks, both verbal and physical, on Woodland residents who are Asian, American, and Pacific Islanders. Thank you for addressing these racist attacks. Thank you for ensuring that equal treatment and protection are given to Woodland Asian American and Pacific Islander residents. We value your wise leadership in protecting Woodland's residents. There have been vicious attacks on the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. I don't want this racist hate and violence in Woodland. So wrong. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Yep Salinas. I live in Woodland, and I am speaking on agenda item number 8. I have been a victim of anti-Asian racism in Woodland. Since COVID-19, these racial attacks, verbally and physically, have happened to me 6 separate times. Most of the time, they have happened to me in the grocery store, either Costco or Raley's, or even in the parking lot. These have been complete strangers to me, and they have occurred in English and Spanish. People have tried to assault me, and all of them have blamed me for COVID-19. I want to thank the wise leadership of the Woodland City Council addressing these racist attacks and trying to preserve the safety of your Asian American and Pacific Islander residents in Woodland. Thank you for ensuring that equal treatment and protection are given to Woodland's Asian American and Pacific Islander residents. We value your wise and brave leadership in protecting Woodland's residents. There have been vicious racist attacks on the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities recently in Northern California, especially the elderly, with one death last week in San Francisco. I do not want anyone else to suffer this racial hate and violence in Woodland. I understand that it has also reached for the children, and we need to address that. Thank you so much for your wise leadership and leading the way for protection of Woodland's residents and being a beacon of light for the entire nation. Thank you so much for voting and taking care of this issue.
My name is Jessica Chen. I am a member of the California APAA organization. I'm requesting your support of item 8, which addresses the growing racist verbal and physical attacks against Asian Pacific Islanders in Woodland. Nationally, there are over 2,500 recent assaults in Asian Pacific Islander Americans. Your support of item 8 will demonstrate that the racism against Asian Pacific Islanders will not be tolerated in our own backyard here in the city of Woodland. Thank you. Have a good one.
Hello, my name is Jesse Salinas, and as a resident of Woodland, I am speaking on agenda item number 8. As a member of my family can attest, there have been anti-Asian racial attacks to the members of our community. These attacks to our Asian American and Pacific Islander residents are unacceptable and must stop. However, to do so, we must first acknowledge as a society the existence of racism and then take steps to stop such abhorrent behavior. Your acknowledgement of these incidences and denouncing them is the first important step. Thank you for your leadership and being one of the first city councils in the nation to take this initial step to combat such racism toward the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michelle Darling. I'm a regional ally calling on agenda item number 8. I understand that there have been racist attacks, both verbal and physical, on Woodland residents who are Asian American and Pacific Islander. Thank you for addressing these racist attacks. Thank you for ensuring that equal treatment and protection are given to Woodland's Asian American and Pacific Islander residents. We value your wise leadership in protecting Woodland's residents. There have been vicious racist attacks on Asian American and Pacific Islander communities recently across Northern California, especially the elderly, with one death last week. I do not want this racist hate and violence in Woodland or in any local community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Liu. L-I-U is my last name. I'm a member of the California APAA, Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Organization. I would like your support of the agenda item number 8, which talks about the growing racist assaults and attacks against Asian Pacific Islanders in Woodland, California. Nationally, there are over 2,500 recent assaults on Asian Pacific Islander Americans, and this is really concerning to everyone, including the mainstream and minority communities. And we would appreciate your support of this agenda item to show that racism against any minority group, including Asian Americans, should not be tolerated in our own area here in the city of Woodland. We do business here in Woodland. We have restaurants here, and it's very important that this is addressed and that we take action as well. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Bye.
Jay, are there additional recordings?
There are, just a moment.
Hi, my name is Wei Zhen. I'm a member of California APAA. It's Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs. I'm request you to support item 8, which addresses the growing racist verbal and physical attack against the Asian Pacific Islanders in Woodland. Nationally, there are over 2,500 recent cases of the Asian Pacific Islander American. Your support of item 8 will be demonstrate that racism against Asian Pacific Islander will not be tolerated in our own backyard. Here is the city of Woodland. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Rosanna Huang. I am a member of the California APAA, Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Organization. I'm requesting your support of item 8, which addresses the growing racist verbal and physical attack against Asian Pacific Islander in Woodland. Nationally, there are over 2,500 recent assaults on Asian Pacific Islander Americans. Your support of item 8 will be demonstrate that racism against Asian Pacific Islander will not be tolerated in our own backyard here in the city of Woodland. Thank you, and you have a great day.
Hello, my name is Catherine Rupert, and I live in Woodland. I am calling to speak to agenda item number 9. I understand that there have been racist attacks on Woodland residents who are Asian American and Pacific Islander. Recently, there have been several racist attacks on the AAPI communities in Northern California, especially towards the elderly, and I do not want this racist hate and violence in Woodland. Thank you for addressing these racist attacks and for ensuring that equal treatment and protection are given to Woodland's Asian American and Pacific Islander residents.
Hey, my name is Joe Wong. I'm a member of California APAA. I'm requesting your support for item number 8, which addresses the growing racist, verbal, and physical attack against Asian Pacific American in Woodland. Nationally, there's been over 2,500 recent assaults on Asian Pacific Americans. Your support of item number 8 will demonstrate that racism against Asian American will not be tolerated in our backyard and here in Woodland. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Yen Marshall. I am the National Executive Director of APAA, stand for Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs. We are a nonprofit organization, nonpartisan, with the mission to inspire and empower Asian Pacific Islander Americans through education, leadership, and civic engagement. I am requesting your support of item number 8, which addresses the growing racist verbal and physical attacks against Asian Pacific Islander in Woodland. Nationally, there are over 2,500 recent assaults on Asian Pacific Islander Americans, according to the APAA hate website. Your support of item number 8 will demonstrate that racism against Asian Pacific Islanders will not be tolerated in our own backyard here in the city of Woodland. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Kemper, resident and a citizen of the city of Woodland, and I would like to encourage the City Council to pass a resolution against racism and violence against all people of color, but in particular at this point, the Asian population. It's cruel, not necessary, and shows a certain meanness in our population that should not be acceptable. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alana Matthews, and I am a regional ally calling in on agenda item number 8. I understand that there have been racist attacks, both verbal and physical, on Woodland residents who are Asian American and Pacific Islander. Thank you for addressing these racist attacks. Thank you for ensuring that equal treatment and protection are given to Woodland's Asian American and Pacific Islander residents. We value your wise leadership in protecting all of Woodland's residents. There have been vicious racist attacks on the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities recently in Northern California, especially the elderly, with one death that occurred last week. I do not want this racist hate and violence in Woodland or any local jurisdiction. Thank you for this leadership. And again, I am an African American ally and do believe that every citizen needs to be safe. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for sending in your comments today. We do appreciate it. And I think you'll find us all in solidarity with you when we vote in a moment. But before we do that, Madam Clerk, are there any other public comments on any item on the consent agenda, in addition to the recordings we've heard?
No, I don't see any, but I did want to remind if there are attendees that want to speak, they do need to press *9 on their phone to raise their hands. I was reminded by Jay Kimura.
Thank you. If you want to be heard tonight, *9 raises your hand, and our clerk will call my attention to the fact that you're on the line waiting to speak. All right, but I believe that concludes the public input on the consent calendar. Now, as I understand it, no member of the council wishes to take any of the items off consent, although some have comments on some of the items. So what I'd like to propose is that we proceed to a vote at this time, and then make our comments about specific items after the vote.
Mayor, I'll move the items on the consent calendar, and I do have a couple of comments on a couple of the items.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. Is there a second to the motion?
Mayor Stallard, this is Councilwoman Vega.
Thank you. So is that a second, Myra?
Oh, sorry. No, so Mayor Stallard, I'm going to recuse myself from item 21. So my home is within 500 feet of that subdivision. So I will be recusing myself from item 21.
We will make sure when we can note the vote that you are not participating in item 21. Thank you. I need a second for the motion.
Mayor Stallard?
Yes, Tanya.
I think I need to recuse myself from the item 3 and 3. I was not on the council at that time, so I don't think I should vote on the minutes.
All right, you will be shown as recused from item 3.
Thank you.
All right. Vicki, do you want to second the motion?
Mayor Stallard?
Yes.
Was that item 3, which is now item 4? If that's
yes.
Yes.
The minutes of the prior meetings where Tanya was not present, she wishes to recuse herself from voting.
Thank you.
So we have Tanya recusing herself from the minutes, and we have Myra recusing herself from item 21, which relates to the final subdivision map of Cal West Phase 2 because it's proximate to her home. So, Councilwoman Fernandez, we second the motion?
The motion?
You do?
Yes, sorry, I second the motion.
Thank you. It's a bit complicated. There's a lot of items here and we have issues. So with a motion by Councilmember Landsberg and a second by Councilmember Fernandez, we're now ready to vote on items 4 through 23, accepting item 12, which is dropped from the calendar, and recognizing the recusals as previously stated. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Fernandez? Councilmember Fernandez?
Sorry, aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
You did, Tanya.
She said aye. I could see it, but I couldn't hear it.
Oh, sorry, aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
Mayor Stallard?
Aye. So thank you. That concludes the considering the adoption of the consent calendar, but we do have comments on some of the item questions related to whether or not they should be passed. So I'll start with you, Councilmember Landsberg.
I'm going to go straight to number 9. While I fully support this resolution, it actually makes me sick that we have to do this tonight. In 2021, we're still dealing with these issues. When will we learn that we are all Americans and we need to show respect for everyone regardless of our ethnicity? This is disgusting to me that our Asian community has to come to us for help and for protection. Shouldn't have to do that. But in today's culture, we have people who intend to divide us in one way or another. We need not listen to those people. We need to stay as one because we're all Americans. We all live in this country. We live in this county. We live in this city. Let's act as one people and we'll all get through this. As Americans, this needs to stop. I received a lot of comments about and request to endorse this item. I don't hesitate at all to endorse this. And I received those comments and I thank everyone that sent me comments about this. And for those people that think it's funny to do this or they get a kick out of it, there's a special place in hell for you. And I hope you're going to enjoy your time there. That's where you're going to end up if you continue this kind of conduct. It's only illegal, it's immoral, and shame on you.
Rich, before you move on to the other issues, why don't we all have our say about item 9? And it was renumbered to be item 9. Does any other member of the council wish to comment as well? I see Councilmember Fernandez. Please unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. I just want to say that I feel much regret in hearing the comments by Lisa Salinas, and know that we stand with you, know that we are sorry that you had to experience that in our community. But it also reminds us that it is a conversation that we need to have, that within our community there is racism, and there is fear about the unknown or the others. And unfortunately, we are addressing this because it is a real issue for many residents, not only in Woodland, but throughout our nation. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. Mayor Pro Tem Vega for creating or bringing up the resolution. And again, to all of those who called in, know that we stand in solidarity with you and know that this is an issue that we need to obviously continue to have dialogue on, that it is not ended with a resolution, but it is the beginning of a conversation that maybe does need to be initiated and resolved so that others are not experiencing these awful experiences within our community, whether we're anyone of color, whether it's Asian Pacificers or any other community member. So thank you for bringing this to the forefront, and thank you for the resolution. And we stand again in solidarity with you and know that we do not tolerate this behavior.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. Anyone else? Councilmember Cadena. And then we'll get to you, Myra, excuse me.
Sorry. I too would like to thank Ms. Salinas for bringing this to our attention. And I think the first step is for us acknowledging it and making sure that the people of Woodland know that this is not something that we will tolerate. And I just appreciate the courage to bring it forward and so that we can address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. And now, Myra, thank you for your patience, Myra. Councilmember Vega.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Stallard. So I appreciate everybody's overwhelming support for this resolution. Now, I just want to say this is just the first step. It is unacceptable that we're addressing this day and age. You know, I've heard some of these attacks happen in the Bay Area, In my mind, it was always, oh, our community doesn't do this. This doesn't exist in our community. So I think by addressing it, having these discussions, we're going to begin to eliminate these things from happening. This is not acceptable, not here, not anywhere in the country. We're all Americans. We just want to challenge our community to speak about these things, to educate our children, to have conversations in our community. No community member should feel any danger by going to the grocery store. We shouldn't have fear about being attacked because of the color of our skin or our national origin. So thank you for your support. And again, this is just the first step. Let's think about how else we can address these racist issues to make Woodland a community that's welcoming of all members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myra, and all my colleagues. I just want to say is I can never understand how anybody feels that they're any better than anybody else. We are all fellow children of God as far as I'm concerned, and we should celebrate and just love everyone. And, you know, I don't know what kind of weakness, if character causes people to feel that they're somehow better or that they can attack another human being. It just simply escapes me. If anyone wants to ever have a talk about this, I'm all ears. I'm ready to sit down and visit with anybody. But everybody is welcome in this community. Frankly, there's a lot of good going on in this community. I don't want to overstate the negative, but the fact that it's there means it needs to be dealt with. And I support my colleagues thinking that conversations are really, really helpful. And frankly, I'm just dismayed that this is even happening. I can hardly believe it. So, you know, all I can say is if you're inclined to feel this way or act this way, stop it. You need help. Call me up. Call any of us up. Let's have a conversation and see if we can't heal this form of behavior. That concludes what I have to say about that. I understand, Councilmember Landsberg, you wanted to talk with the chief about the quarterly police report?
Yeah, you know, Mr. Mayor, it seems so unimportant at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's an important topic. We shouldn't stop talking about these issues that are in our community. And yes, Councilmember Vega, it does happen in all communities. And it's incumbent upon all of us to recognize it, to do what we need to do to stop it and take action. And the only comment I have for the police chief is this. I'm going to forget about the item I was going to talk about originally, but Chief, if you're listening, you get one of these referrals about this illegal and immoral conduct, I expect you to use your staff to bring this individual to justice, because this is illegal and it's not going to be tolerated in our community. Would you assure me of that, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Chief Derek Caff here. Yeah, the Woodland Police Department absolutely stands with all members of our community, and we are committed to remaining impartial, but to upholding the tenets, not only of the nation, but of our good community. This behavior can't be tolerated here. I encourage anybody, if you are the victim, that you would contact the police department. Let us investigate. Let us make referrals. If crimes have occurred, we can make arrests. In some instances, when a crime has occurred, if a crime has occurred, we will make an arrest. But let us work with you. We also are really connected with the resources, both for the victims and for those that are challenged with maybe an upbringing that has a propensity towards this. We can direct you in the right direction if you want to get help. So reach out to us. We are here to serve, and we really love this community.
Thank you, Chief. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Before we leave the area, I just want to also say I appreciate your quarterly report. I saw substantial reductions across all major felonies except aggravated assault, which was up about 10%. So I know your people work hard to do a great job for us. And while there's always room for more progress, we can be grateful for what you've been accomplishing. So thank you for that. Any other comments on any item on the consent calendar now that we've adopted it? All right.
I have.
Oh, yes, Myra.
All right. So I have some comments. So on the fire department annual status report. So I would like to request for future meetings to look at in more detail some of the response times by the fire stations and talk about some of mitigating plans that we have for when response times are not what they should be. So that is something, Mr. Manager and Chief Zane, I'd look forward to having that. So thank you in advance.
Thank you, Councilmember Vega. I'm sure we can get on. Go ahead.
Yes, one other item. So this is Chief Calf. So I've noticed an uptick in reports on Nextdoor about break-ins or even car thefts that are happening sometimes in broad daylight. Can you speak to a little bit kind of some of the trends that you're seeing in this new pandemic world?
Chief?
Absolutely. First, I want to mention that we are working on the police department's annual report for 2020, and I hope that we're going to have it published in the next month or two. We'll get that out to everybody electronically. So here in 2020 in Woodland, like many other communities in California and around the nation, we saw an increase in mainly two specific crime categories. That was an increase in both aggravated assaults and motor vehicle thefts. Our officers are really proficient at handling both those types of investigations because they get so much practice doing them, unfortunately. But I'm proud of the hard work that they put into each of those cases because every crime report we take involves a victim. And we're committed to providing the best service possible in a fair and impartial manner. But importantly, we saw decreases in the areas of homicides, rapes, burglaries, and we did see a decrease in thefts. Woodland's trends in 2020 were really on par with what we saw both locally and around the nation. So we're going to continue to monitor the crime trends, investigate what those underlying trends are that cause crime, and then implementing effective solutions as we move forward. And while it can be very frustrating to the community, and sometimes frankly to our officers, to have to arrest the same person over and over again when they're released from custody, we're going to continue to operate within the current system. However, we do work closely with the Yolo Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office to prioritize our combined limited resources and focus on those that present a persistent and greatest danger to the community. Now, along those lines, I'm really excited to report an upcoming opportunity that Sheriff Lopez and District Attorney Reisig and myself have. We're going to be speaking with U.S. Congressman John Garamendi regarding what is working and what needs more work in the areas related to zero bail initiatives, gun violence reduction strategies, and the needs of our community here to increase public safety. You know, Yolo County and Woodland has a solid history of innovative solutions to complex problems. If someone is watching the council meeting tonight and wants to get involved, I urge them, go to the Yolo District Attorney's Neighborhood Court website and sign up to be a panelist. Neighborhood Court is a restorative justice program that has been studied and shown to reduce recidivism. We need the community's help in expanding this program, and ultimately, it will bring more public safety right here in Woodland. So I hope that answers the question.
It does, Chief Cap, and I just want to, echo something that community members have brought up, just concerns over the zero bail and the impacts to our local community. So just concerns over a loss of feeling of safety. So I would encourage you in your discussions to demonstrate the impacts and also advocate for a change to ensure that our community is safe and protected. Thank you.
Thank you, will do.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega. I'm sorry your picture doesn't show up on my screen, so I appreciate your speaking up when I step over you unintentionally. All right. Any other comments on any item on our consent calendar? Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. Just a quick comment, which I made earlier to our city manager, Ken Hyatt, was regarding the Sustainability Advisory Committee minutes. And they have a rubric on there regarding some of their overall topics of concern. and maybe a need for collaboration with the council on issues that we might need to just look at more thoroughly with them. So just for future reference on the item of the Sustainability Commission, and perhaps all the others, just making time to have some collaboration with them and during our council meetings or separately. I think that was an area where they gave an overall 4 and 5 for their review of interaction and collaboration with the council. So making sure that we're reaching out to them and they're feeling that we're listening to their concerns or that we can collaborate together on issues.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. I saw the same comment and scheduled a 10 o'clock coffee on Friday with the chairperson.
Thank you. So you're on top of it.
Well, and you know, one other councilman could join me if you care to join me. Okay, 10 o'clock Friday morning at Morgan's Mill. All right, that concludes the discussion of the consent calendar, and I appreciate all the thoughts and thank the staff for the feedback as well. This brings us to item 8, public hearings. The first item is going to be continued to March 2nd, 2021. So I'm going to open the public hearing, indicate that this item is continued to March 2nd, 2021. And if there's any further comment at this time from any member of the public, Madam Clerk?
No, we have nothing.
All right, I'm presuming no comments from council members. We will continue this item as stated, and I will close the public hearing at this time. I'll wait the city attorney to see if I'm doing this right. So you can give me body language if I'm not. All right, yes, sir.
Oh, okay. That's fine. We're continuing it to March 2nd. So right. That is the key point.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to item I, report to the city manager. And item 25 is our regular weekly report on update on COVID-19 with response and preparedness. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'll start this meeting's report with an update from County CAO, who confirmed that the state validated that the county, Yolo County, now meets metrics for advancing into the red tier as of today. So what that means for the county and Woodland included is that as early as next Tuesday, we will be advancing into the next tier into the state's framework for reopening. That will allow additional restaurant indoor seating capacity, as well as some other business activities. Even more exciting, I think now for me, is allows even more additional youth sports to begin transitioning into a competitive mode as opposed to just clinics and practice. So very positive trend that we continue to see there, and we'll keep the council and the community updated as we begin to roll into that and help folks understand what that means in terms of changing circumstances. Also want to report some positive news around the vaccine. Council, I think, may have seen the press release that the county issued today, effectively allowing access for what they're characterizing as all frontline workers. That includes those in education, childcare, emergency services, as well as our food and ag workers, to now get access to the vaccine here in the county. So advancing beyond just the age-based system. So as early as this week, in fact, I think today, the county is now reaching out to some of those underserved or under insured populations to allow them to grant access to the county's vaccine allocation, but also our healthcare system and providers will also now be expanding their programs to reach these groups. Also on the vaccine front, as I think it was mentioned by the mayor, Dignity in the city have collaborated. We've provided access at the community center to allow Dignity Health to provide a vaccine clinic at the city's facility there. during the daytime throughout the week. So expands Dignity's capacity to administer the vaccine to our community. So very happy and positive report there. It's been a very fruitful and productive collaboration. Looking forward to seeing that continue as the vaccine rolls out. Also wanted to report that we continue to press the question to our neighbors to the south and the Healthy Davis Together program to see if there's interest in capacity to expand their rapid saliva-based testing platform county-wide. So just want to report there's very positive progress there and hope within the coming weeks we will be able to fully launch that testing program, which will be another important asset to allow our community to better manage and respond to the pandemic through the coming months. Also, as the council heard, the new homeless shelter experienced an outbreak, COVID outbreak a little over a week ago. We were fortunate to be able to transition those residents at the shelter to Project Room Key rooms here within our county. And the report now is that folks will begin transitioning back to the shelter later this week. And we've been able to, again, partner with Healthy Davis Together to implement some protocols and procedures to help provide rapid testing, as well as train some of the staff of the shelter to be able to monitor and use some of the best practices for identifying potential symptoms. And then lastly, I want to report that the mayor and the president of the school board have identified a desire to conduct a joint meeting between the Woodland Joint Unified School District Board of Trustees as well as the council. So I'll be working with a superintendent of the school district to identify a date in the coming weeks to hold that joint meeting. And really the purpose of that joint session will be to have the council express an opportunity and an interest to support their efforts to get our students and youth in our community back into in-person instruction. And so we'll hear a report from the district as to what their plans are to transition that direction and have a conversation around how we as a city can support their efforts. So that concludes this week's report on COVID-19. And again, welcome the council's questions and comments on the matter.
Questions in council of the city manager, Councilmember Fernandez. Unmute.
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Stallard. And just a quick couple of questions. On the NBC News this afternoon, there was some information, which I don't know if you've heard or if it's accurate, regarding vaccinations in Yolo County. There's a discrepancy on those available within our county and what's being reported to the state. And just want to know if you have any maybe clarifications on anything about the vaccination numbers that are available in our county.
Yeah, I'll have to investigate that and follow up with the council to understand better where that discrepancy is. I know early on there was some concern that Yolo County allocation of vaccine was lower than some of our surrounding counties. And the county health office was trying to investigate as to how those determinations for allocations were being made. But I will, I'll certainly follow up and provide a follow-up informational item for the council on that.
I think today's report was regarding the dashboard, indicating that Yolo County had something like 45,000 vaccinations available.
Oh.
This 2,400 maybe available within the week. So there was a discrepancy on the dashboard at the state level. So I mean, just wanted to maybe confirm that it is a snafu on the state's part, and from what the news report indicated. But the other question was also, according to the news report, there was accessibility for the clinics for those who were eligible for the frontline or tier 1A or 1B, but not necessarily for your own personal healthcare providers. So I just want to know if that is maybe not accurate.
If I understand the question, are healthcare providers also granting access for the full list of classified job types in Phase 1B, Tier 1? Or is that just through the county's allocation?
Yeah, according to the report, they were saying that it was through the county only for our healthcare providers were not providing the vaccination. So just a discrepancy in information. So I'm just checking to see if it's just misinformation that I'm getting, or if it's accurate that healthcare providers also are having access for patients to receive the vaccination through their healthcare providers.
Yeah, again, I'll follow up and confirm. My understanding is that, the county health officers, new direction allows those healthcare providers to make that discretion themselves moving forward. But I'll verify, and it's not surprising, right, with how things are changing again on a daily basis that information gets crossed. But I'll certainly make sure the council has the latest accurate information on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Vicki. Councilmember Vega or Landsberg, any comments? No, okay.
I have a comment, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So, you had talked about red tier and youth sports moving to competitive. Does that mean that the city will be opening up some sports programs as well? Or are we just talking about competitive at the schools?
Well, we do offer access to city-owned facilities to some of our youth sports. So we have had conversations gearing up for this moment in time with our local youth sports organizations. So as soon as we get that clearance to move forward with certain programs, I think baseball will fall into that new category. I think soccer maybe is a little bit further behind, but as those additional sports that are identified by the state guidance are allowed, we're in a position to partner with our local youth organizations to allow those competitive activities now to advance.
Oh, good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Any additional comment? Any member of the public have a comment? Madam Clerk?
No.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude our discussion of item 25. Thank you, Mr. Manager. And item 26 will be presented, I believe, by Brent Myra, as our city manager owns property within the area under discussion, so he will not be participating. Brent, you want to give us just a quick rundown of what's up with item 26, the Pendergast Street and Bartlett Avenue neighborhood traffic calming?
Sure. I'll do a little intro here. We've been working with the Pendergast and Bartlett neighborhoods for a while. I think we have a plan that works for the neighborhood at this point. And with that, I'll turn it over to Katie Wurzel. Katie's our principal civil engineer in charge of traffic and capital projects. Katie.
Thank you. Can you see my screen with the map of the area?
Yes, Katie, we can.
Excellent. So what I'm showing you here is the layout of the area that's in question, and just kind of by way of quick update and background a little bit, the request before you tonight and the plan before you tonight is actually the second request for this work. The project area was initially studied and proposed for active traffic calming with the 2019 pilot project, but was rejected out of potential concern that the traffic calming on Pendergast might negatively impact the Southwood and Bartlett corridors. So the neighborhoods the residents in those neighborhoods came together and turned out this plan that you see in front of you for the city's consideration, which includes one speed hump per block for the entire corridor of Pendergast between College and West Street, and for Southwood and Bartlett between the same limits. In October 2020, the project was presented to council, And the data was provided to council showing that the studies were done, but that unfortunately the corridors didn't meet the standards for active traffic calming. Per the direction provided to staff at that meeting, we prepared a plan and sent notices to the residents of the area requesting approval of the plan. The threshold for that approval was 75% of all properties with frontage on the corridor. As of today, actually, I have updated the exhibit in front of you that was in your packet based on a couple of additional responses that came through. And what we have is about, for the corridors combined, I have the data broken out just for your edification, but the corridors combined is how we would look at this. And the approval percentage was 67% compared to the 75 that was required, with about 6% in opposition. It's important to note that in my notice that went out to the residents requesting approval, we did not ask for nor expect any sort of opposition or no vote be returned because we were simply asking for approvals. We had a fairly high rate of return of the approvals and just responses in general, but unfortunately didn't hit that 75% threshold, which is why we're here again tonight. I might have already said this, I apologize if I did, but the table in front of you, the table in your packet was updated because a resident called out a math error that I had. And then here again, I've updated the numbers to show the additional comments that were received. So with that, anybody has any questions?
Thank you. I will kick off the discussion if I may. These two streets are all in the 2nd District, and being the oldest part of town, it's clearly most challenged by scofflaw drivers. It's on the grid, and people use these streets to avoid the arterials, and sometimes they go quite fast, in fact, teeth-rattling fast. So it's been a problem for a long time, and the neighbors have worked really hard on this for 4 years. It got to council once, and the reason it couldn't go forward is neighbors on the adjoining street, Bartlett, felt that they'd be disadvantaged. The traffic would shift to Bartlett if only Pendergast got the speed cushion. So the new solution is to put speed cushions on each block of both east-west streets. So I certainly urge support for this. And I'd be prepared to make a motion in the interest of my residents at an appropriate time. Colleagues, anyone else have questions or concerns on this?
Mr. Mayor, Rich Landsberg.
Oh, go ahead, please, Mr. Landsberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Traffic calming certainly is in the top 3 areas of concerns for our residents, regardless of where we live. Unfortunately, the problem is not going to go away in the rest of the city by implementing these projects on these 3 streets. It would tickle me to no end to have the chief of police come to me and the council and ask for more ticket books because they ran out of ticket books. To me, that's going to be the answer for this problem, not just in this neighborhood, but throughout the city. But having said that, it's a good start for these particular neighbors in the Pendergast, Bartlett, Southwood area. And I think it's long overdue. Let's get this thing built.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. Council Member Tanya Garcia-Cadena.
Right, so, I'm sure many of you have seen the videos of the cars flying down those streets and the accidents that have been caused, and it's extremely dangerous. And I worry for the families that live on those streets and are affected by these the speeders that are taking those streets to avoid the other arterial routes. And so I think this is something that's a start, and I agree with Councilmember Landsberg. It's a start.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia-Cadena. Councilmember Fernandez.
Okay, I just want to clarify with Katie or with perhaps Mayor Stallard. It says approval received of 67% for the combined corridors. What's the ratio? Is it 75% that is expected, or is that just basic supermajority of residents.
As I understand, 75% of everybody, and not everybody returns their ballot. So of all the ballots received, it was actually far more than 67%. But the question is, if a ballot was not received, should it automatically be treated as a no? And that's, I think going forward, we're going to want to change that procedure. It's just too complicated and confusing. But overwhelmingly, the neighbors of these streets support this at this time.
Yeah, well, I realize that. I just wanted clarifications because I know, as we all know, there are issues with speeding in various parts of our city. And so, you know, if that is all that's needed for future concerns for speed bumps, you know, as people race down, you know, Parkland Avenue or any other part of the city or Pioneer, as long as residents are giving the same opportunity to examine traffic speeding mitigation for their community with the same level of ratio or responses, so that we aren't setting a precedent of 67% if it's 75%. So I understand it's an issue. It's an issue throughout our community for most residents to have people speeding through their residence. So just wanted to clarify what the normal procedure would be in the future if, you know, if just a majority of the responses is sufficient to.
It needs to be a supermajority, frankly, to go ahead. But I think we can talk about that. Yes, Rich.
67% is good enough for impeachment. It's good enough for me for traffic calming. Thank you.
Okay.
I hate Tom or Mayor Sollard. I don't know if it's worth clarifying. The 75% number is a number that's adopted by council. There's not a state or federal standard for traffic calming. The survey we've done is the numbers in different communities are between 60 and 75%. If we had come back with numbers over 75%, we would not have returned to council. We would have just designed the project and brought it back to council for project approval of design. Because it was below the threshold that council had previously adopted, we felt the need to come back to council and verify that council was supportive. But there's obviously strong support from the neighborhood. So just a little background on that.
Thank you, Brent.
I'm not disagreeing with that there isn't a concern. That's all I'm saying is that if another residential area has a concern, you know, will they be given the same opportunity to look at those mitigating traffic calming measures, because the majority of the residents have that same concern. So, you know, I understand that it's an issue on Pendergast, Bartlett, and Southwood, but it also is an issue throughout our community. And so as long as we know that the majority of any residence or neighborhood has an issue, is it then allowable for us to look at that information and say the majority of the residents would like to see speed bumps on their street? Are we setting a precedent? That's all. I'm just looking for clarification for future issues, because as we all stated, it is an issue for many residents in many neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one last comment before we vote.
Okay, I think, I don't know, Councilmember Vega wanted to speak.
I do, Mayor Sollard. So,
please proceed.
I just, sure, thank you. So, traffic calming is an issue that I hear from residents in District 5 often, right? So just worry about the cars speeding by and children being out playing and putting families in danger. So it's something that I want us to keep in mind and keep it front and center with limited resources that we have, is just ensuring what Councilwoman Fernandez said is have an equitable measure for approving these types of traffic calming. Something that I discussed with staff during our infrastructure committee is, understanding the process. So what does it take for a community to go through this process that the Pendergast Bartlett Southwood neighborhood went through to evaluate and determine whether or not a traffic calming program is appropriate or meets the needs. So I do just, and with the spirit of ensuring that we have kind of equal distribution of city resources and ensuring that the safety of all of our communities throughout all our districts is addressed in a fair way is important to me.
Thank you. And Councilmember Landsberg?
I just wanted to comment to both Ms. Fernandez and to Ms. Vega, and perhaps for Ms. Garcia Cadena. This particular neighborhood has been after us for I don't know how long.
4 years.
4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not something that's been nilly-willy. And by the way, there are other areas in our city that are right behind them. We've been looking at West Street and some other ones. But I agree with you that fairness is critical. But this is being fair to this particular part of our community. And we have to be able to adjust a little bit. Even though they didn't reach the 75%, certainly a supermajority. But certainly fairness and equality is paramount as we distribute the limited funds for these programs. But there are other ones coming to us here real soon. I'm assuming we got some on West Street coming up, Katie, as well as, why don't you fill us in the rest of the projects that you're working on right now with traffic mitigation. That way the new members will know what we're doing, what you're doing.
Katie, are you there? Are you muted?
Yeah, sorry, had to unmute. So the next petition that we have that we're evaluating is actually on West Street at the south end of town. We are in the process of engaging a design consultant because it's a bigger project than just simple speed humps that need to be designed by a traffic engineer and a civil engineer who understand the complexities of the area that we're working in. Other than that, actually, we don't have any other completed traffic calming requests that we've received petitions back for. We have engaged with a couple different residents who have called in with requests and have submitted documentations out to them, but we have not received anything back. So that's what we're working on currently right now.
And Katie, just to be sure, the new members, any community or any area of the community can petition for this same type of consideration. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have the policy that was approved by council late last year includes criteria by which each street is evaluated depending on the type of street. So for example, Pioneer will be treated differently than Pendergast because of the type of street classification it is. But every street that is eligible, the definition is clearly defined in the policy as to what the thresholds are that need to be met, what evaluation process we would proceed through in order to get to where we're at right now as we have with Pendergast.
Thank you. And my last comment, Mr. Mayor, is this, that perhaps as a city we should, and I hate to give Katie more work than she needs, but perhaps we should invite other areas of our community to do the same thing, to petition the city for consideration for traffic mitigation. Let's publicize this, let's get it out there. Maybe some parts of the city don't know it's available to them. Maybe we haven't done a good job of getting it out there. Let's get this information out there so that others can participate.
Thank you. Any final comments before we go to public comment? Now, I know I received several emails in support of this. I suspect others of you have as well. And I suspect there are callers interested in speaking to us. I'd be most interested in hearing if there's any opposition to this. So, Madam Clerk, are there people who wish to speak in opposition? Do you know?
I don't have any emails or voicemails, and I don't see anyone raising their hand.
If that's the case,
*9 to raise your hand. Yeah, no one.
No one. All right. Well, we've had a robust discussion. I think one of the things we might want to do is just direct staff to clarify the standards again for approval, so that next time we're faced with this kind of situation, we've got standards that are more appropriate than the current one, where if you don't return a ballot, it's treated as a no vote. All right. I would again love the privilege of making this motion, as I've worked on this throughout these 4 years, and I just can't say enough for the neighbors who have worked so hard too. Thank you to the neighbors. So I move that we adopt the plan to install the 8 speed cushions as proposed in this item. Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia Cadena seconds the motion. Madam, is there further discussion of the motion before we go to our roll call?
No.
There being none, and we have considered public comment and there is none, we will now proceed to roll call. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
And Mayor Stallard?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That concludes item 26. And that moves us on to item 27, the Lower Cache Creek Flood Feasibility Study. We're being asked tonight to adopt CEQA findings of fact, adopt a statement of overriding considerations, adopt a mitigation monitoring plan, certify the final environmental impact report for the Woodland Flood Risk Management Project, and approve the Woodland Flood Risk Reduction Project. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And as Tim Bush and the flood team prepare their presentation, I wanted to offer a little bit of context into the action tonight that the council is being requested to take. And as the council knows, providing flood protection for our community has been a priority goal for the council for over 10 years now. And we have been actively working with our federal and state agency partners to identify a solution and a concept to provide flood protection for our community that meets both state and federal requirements. So tonight's action is essentially an action to certify the environmental document that evaluated the environmental impacts associated with the Woodland Flood Risk Management Project. This project, again, is at concept stage at this point. Tonight's action, if the council were to approve it, would not authorize the city moving forward with construction of the project. There is still many years and much work still to be done to identify the necessary funding to achieve the project, take the next level of design refinement, and work with the affected property owners and other stakeholders to refine the project concept into a design level that we could then go out and once the funding's in place, authorize bidding and ultimately construction. So there's still a significant amount of work to be done and a lot of conversations with affected stakeholders before a project ultimately will be built. So tonight's action, I just wanted to offer a little bit of context for the council to know what the next steps are and the significance of tonight's action. So with that, I'm going to ask Tim Bush and Rick Reinhardt, the lead project managers for our flood project, to walk the council through a little bit of history on the project, the study that we've been engaged with the Army Corps of Engineers over the last 7-8 years now, and a little bit of forward-looking calendar as to what to expect over the coming years. So with that, Tim or Rick, I'll have you walk the council through the presentation.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is Tim Bush, Principal Utilities Engineer for the city. I'll be giving the presentation tonight. Kind of first, some quick background. The picture in this slide, hopefully you can all see my screen. The picture that you're looking at is Cache Creek actually overtopping its banks. This happened on February 27, 2019. So really just about 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago next week or the week after. So what we're looking at is the flood fighting team actually standing on top of Cache Creek levee as the Cache Creek is overtopping its bank and flooding towards Woodland, essentially. It looks like they're standing in somewhere between 6 inches and a foot of water that was overtopping and actively putting down sandbags to protect us from flooding. So it's not so much a theoretical exercise in flooding. It actually happened just 2 years ago. As Ken had mentioned, we have been engaged with the Corps since 2011 to find a flood solution for Woodland and hopefully surrounding areas as part of the Lower Cache Creek feasibility study. What this map shows is the 200-year floodplain extents in Woodland area. There's two different regulations we're operating under. One of them is FEMA requires flood protection for the 100-year storm, which is a storm you expect roughly once every 100 years. The state of California through SB 5 now requires a 200-year level of protection. So protection against a storm you expect once every 200 years. The picture in the earlier slide I just showed was a storm that we expect roughly once every 8 years. So a storm we see roughly once every 8 years does actually overtop Cache Creek levees and start sending water towards Woodland. The Cache Creek system originally, so on this map, Cache Creek is the kind of the squiggly line towards the top with the 4 white captions above it. That levee system was never designed to provide 100-year flood protection. At best, it probably had protection against a 20-year storm, currently about a storm we see once every 8 years. So there's no way that that levee could be maintained enough to be providing 100-year flood protection for us. So what this map shows is really the extent of a 200-year flood if Cache Creek were to experience that. It basically brings floodwater into Woodland, both sides of I-5, into Woodland, down to about Beamer Street, east of West Street, really. Everything east or north of I-5, including the entirety of the city's industrial area. So really the problem that we're trying to solve with this project is there are roughly 1,000 homes in Woodland that, if they have a mortgage, have to pay flood insurance. Flood insurance is costing these homeowners somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000 every year. The entirety of the industrial area and all the businesses in that area are also in the floodplain. And I don't know business flood insurance rates, but I do know it's not inexpensive. So really, for roughly 25% or so of Woodland's land area being in the map floodplain, it's a pretty expensive undertaking for both homeowners and businesses that are located here. This map, by the way, shows flooding by depth. So the white areas are 0 to 1 foot deep flooding. The pink or magenta areas are 1 to 5. Blues are 5 to 10, and the greens are more than 10. So you see most of Woodland itself is around 1 to 5 feet of flooding depth. The eastern part gets closer to 10. I-5 between Woodland and Sacramento ends up experiencing about 13 feet of flood depth. And one of the major problems with that is that there's no way for the water to get out once it's there. I want to talk about the project real briefly. So the earlier part of the study, we looked at something like 26 alternatives. One of them was alternative 6B, which was along Cache Creek itself, basically raising and strengthening the levees along Cache Creek itself. That alternative was cut relatively early on, mainly due to the heavy cost of that alternative. It was something more like in the neighborhood of $650 to $700 million, mainly because it's a longer project, a lot more land acquisition, a lot of environmental impacts. So the 26 alternatives we had before, some of them were including a dam further upstream, a bunch of other options that we had. They got coalesced down to four alternatives and eventually down to the one that you see in the screen before you. This is called alternative 2A, but really now it's just simply called the project. This is the alternative that we have going forward to hopefully eventually construction. Kind of walk through the project features real quickly. This project is really a combination of a levee and a conveyance channel, and the two really go very closely together. So in speaking of the levee, it's basically a levee north of Churchill Downs Road, extended from County Road 98 to the Cache Creek settling basin. On the western part, from 98 to Highway 113, the levee is roughly 6 feet tall. It's a relatively short levee, not all that obtrusive to people driving in the area. East from 113, it grows from 6 feet tall to about 16 feet tall, to basically the same height as the existing Cache Creek settling basin levee. And the other major project feature is the conveyance channel. We have included in the project a 150-foot wide storm drainage conveyance channel. The purpose of that is to take water that leaves Cache Creek, and we're not changing with this project how Cache Creek operates. We're not making flooding worse or better than it currently is from Cache Creek. We're simply picking up water that leaves Cache Creek when it does flood, convey that water to the east as quickly as we can and get that out of the area as quickly as possible. So we've included a series of all the roads that go north of Woodland today, with the exception of one will go up and over the levee. The other one gets closure structure. And I can get to that if we need to. But so basically at all the roads that go up and over the levee, a series of culverts to convey water through that system quickly. We're adding a series of culverts underneath the railroad tracks and 113 to help move water much quicker underneath 113. And then we have a weir and culverts into the Cache Creek settling basin, and then culverts into Woodland storm drainage system. And the purpose of those is to move water more quickly away from the north when Cache Creek does actually flood. Another, so I would like to say kind of a little bit more background. So this flood study started in 2011. There was a measure passed in 2003 called Measure S. Measure S basically placed certain restrictions on studying a flood solution for the city of Woodland. So through our entire plan formulation, the entirety of the 26 alternatives we looked at and arriving at the alternative 2A, that's the project going forward, through that entire development process, we had compliance with Measure S in mind. So we made sure that we were compliant with Measure S throughout this whole process. And one of those features that did that is the slide that you see before you now. This shows differences in flooding before and after the project. So into Woodland, I don't know if it's magenta or purple color, depending on what a person's computer resolution is areas that would be taken out of the FEMA floodplain. So basically the entirety of Woodland urban area would come out of the floodplain. There would no longer be a requirement for flood insurance in Woodland after the project's completed. North of Woodland, the areas where it shows as red or yellow or blue are areas where there's somewhat of an increase of flooding depth. The color determines the depth. So the areas that are, I'll focus mainly on the areas that are red. So that area, if Cache Creek were to flood today, would experience flooding in flooding depths in the range of 6 to 10 feet. As a result of our project, and it takes some doing to get the water out of the area, there would be a resultant increase in flood depth by about 2 feet. So what we've included, and this is not uncommon in flood projects, it's actually a relatively common thing. So what we've included in the project is the purchase of flood easements. So what that means is that we would pay those property owners, everybody who owns property in the red and yellow areas, that we would pay them for the ability to stack water up to 2 feet deeper on their property when it's already flooded 6 to 10 feet deep. So really it's just an incremental increase in flood depth. For that, we'll pay them. We'll pay them for that ability to do so. We're not changing the frequency of when it happens. If it happens once every 50 years, that's fine. Another key project feature is the areas further to the west from there or to the left. There's a bunch of black stars on the screen, and those are structures that would remain kind of in the floodplain north of the city. Where there's not a color, those areas are not in the map floodplain today and are really just out of the project entirely. The areas that are in the gray or white, depending on screen resolution, are areas that we made sure that the project did not make flood impacts worse than they are today for those properties. The way the project alternative formulation worked out, we are unable to get them out of floodplain. The options or alternatives to do that were just far too expensive. But we did add features. So the conveyance channel and the culverts that we're putting in are intended to make flood impacts not worse and if not better than they are today. So the white or gray color shows that there is no change in flooding depths from today to after the project is completed. So basically our project has no impact on flooding depth where those structures are in the white or gray areas. But there's also a decrease in duration. So the addition of culverts beneath the railroad tracks at 113 and 113 do actually alleviate an obstruction to flow at that location. So we actually can show a decrease in duration of flooding, but the flood elevation is not changed. We did include in the project a suite of actions for the structures that remain in the floodplain north of the city. We didn't want to leave anybody out through this process. We did add some things. So things we've included in the project include purchase of flood easements or paying for flood insurance for these homes that remain in floodplain, actually elevating the structure, basically physically raising the structure up above the flood elevation. There's also a product, kind of a flood barrier. It's for shallow depth flooding. These little flood barriers that you can drag and put around your structure. that when a flood comes, it's protected and you can simply put them back in the garage when it's done. We can purchase those. And we left that kind of flexible because each property owner may want something different. Some of these homes may already be elevated above floodplain and they just want us to help them with insurance. We can do that. So we left it flexible, but it is included in the project that we will do something for not only the properties that would experience deeper flooding, but for the structures that remain in the floodplain that do not have a change in flooding. We're also helping them as well. Want to talk real quickly about the overall CEQA process for the project. Woodland is the lead agency for the EIR, and that was EIR preparation was closely coordinated with the Corps of Engineers supplemental environmental impact statement. What I mean by that is the biological resources, archaeological, historical, all that work was shared between the two documents, so we were not duplicating effort in doing the same thing twice. We had the same consultant do the work for both of us. You may hear a comment tonight that we're rushing through this process. I would like to dispel that comment a little bit. We have started on the study back in 2011. We did hold our first public scoping meeting for the EIR, EIS in September 2015. I believe at that time we had 4 alternatives that we presented to the public. We held the public scoping meeting for the EIR itself in September 2019. EIR was released for public comment on March 23rd of 2020. At that time, or shortly after that time, we sent letters and postcards to over 1,000 property owners, both in Woodland and north of Woodland, basically to let them know that EIR is out for public review. Please comment on it if you're in the city and you benefit from flood protection, as well as the people north of the city that may feel like they're not protected. We had a public comment meeting on July 28th of 2020 and closed public comment on August 14th. I would like to mention that CEQA requires a public comment period of 45 days. In our case, we had a 144-day public comment period. Again, we're not in a rush to get this done. We took our time with it, but also it was partly due to March 23rd was right about the start of everything closing down for COVID. And we had to work through exactly how do we manage a public comment period when you can't talk to people. So we worked it out. We were able to get that done. And we ultimately received 23 comment letters from 17 individuals and agencies. But what that really means is we got more than one letter from a couple of individuals, and that's how we got to 23 out of 17 separate individuals. I want to walk through real quick some of the comments. So a number of the comments that we received on the EIR can really be kind of boiled down to 4 common comments to which we prepared master comment responses. I would like to mention also that we've been working with this preferred alternative 2A since really 2016. And a lot of these comments we have been hearing for the past 5 years, or more than 5 years really. And our responses to those comments has been the same for more than 5 years. A good example of that is one of the comments is on property values north of the city. We had an appraisal done back in 2016 by Ben Rosenthal that kind of looked at that issue. There was a legal opinion done on Measure S that was done also back in 2016. So these comments are not new. They've been repeated a number of times over the years and our responses have remained the same. So the first common comment that has a master response is compliance with Measure S. There are a number of questions. Are we complying with Measure S or are we violating Measure S? As I said earlier, a Measure S was in place at the beginning of this effort, so all of our solutions that we've looked at are compliant with Measure S. We are compliant with it. This project is part of a regional solution. We are part of the Lower Sacramento Delta North Regional Flood Management Plan. That is a fairly long acronym altogether. But basically what that is, that's a state Central Valley Flood Protection Board document that looks at how do you improve flood protection for basically the greater metro Sacramento area. So we are part of that effort. That includes enhancements to the Yellow Bypass, to Woodland, Settling Basin, Sacramento River, kind of a whole suite of projects. One of them is under construction right now between the Yellow Bypass and Sacramento River on the other side of the bridge. We are compliant with Measure S in that this study is different than the 2003 effort in 4 key factors. It differs in performance, features, alignment, and effect. I won't go through exactly how right now. If you want me to, I can. We have a several page memo on that exactly. It is included in the EIR that we are quite different than what was studied back almost 20 years ago. Another common comment was on flood risk is how does this change flood risk? In Woodland, in the urban area of Woodland, the floodplain designation would be removed. So flood insurance would no longer be required in Woodland should the project be constructed. North of Woodland, there is a mapped FEMA regulatory floodplain that would remain. However, our project does include several things to not make things worse, but also potentially help properties that remain in the floodplain north of Woodland. We did include flood easements on properties that may experience deeper flooding. We did include measures for structures that remain in the floodplain to either pay flood insurance, elevate the structure, or a few other things. So we did do everything we can to do things for properties north of Woodland. There was another comment made about contaminants and its impact on agricultural land. The Cache Creek system does contain mercury. And so some of these comments were related to if we build a flood protection project for this alternative, how does that change mercury transport through the area, and do we then contaminate farmland? Department of Water Resources, the California Department of Water Resources did hire UC Davis to study exactly that. So they spent some time back in 2016, I think into 2017 a bit, analyzing what are the impacts of higher flooding, higher volume, lower frequency storms like the 50-year storm, 100-year storm, 20-year storm on transport of mercury in the area. And the answer came back that there might actually be a slight benefit in that more of the water will go into the Cache Creek settling basin. But overall, there's not really much impact at all. There's about a 300-page report behind that. I can answer that in much more detail if you want me to, but I'll spare you that today. Another comment was on roadway access. There are roads that go from Woodland north of the city, like 102, 113, Pioneer, or 101. Those roads, if Cache Creek were to flood today, they will go underwater. After our project is completed, they will still go underwater for roughly the same duration. We're not making a change to that. We're not building bridges from Woodland to Knights Landing. We're just leaving it the way it is today. Another common comment was maintenance of the existing flood system on Cache Creek. So Department of Water Resources has responsibility to maintain Cache Creek levees. They will continue to have that responsibility. Our project does rely on a certain amount of the flow remaining within the Cache Creek system in the event a flood event occurs. If the Cache Creek system were to no longer have levees, we would need a more robust levee than what we're planning on building. So the city does have an interest in the state continuing to maintain the levees. The only thing we really can say to that is that the city and the county have committed to continue to work to encourage DWR to properly support or properly maintain their levees. The last common comment was on the selection of the alternatives. SEQA requires that an EIR consider a reasonable range of alternatives. In the EIR, we analyze alternative 2A, which is the project, alternative 2C, and the no project alternatives in detail. We relied on the overall Lower Cache Creek feasibility study and that we evaluated about 26 alternatives originally. And we did not analyze in detail alternatives that the Corps had said have 0% chance of ever being constructed. There's no point in analyzing in detail an alternative that's not going anywhere. So we did not do that. I'm gonna give you a real quick update of the overall Lower Cache Creek feasibility study. The final feasibility study report and the supplemental environmental impact statement were transmitted to headquarters in Washington, D.C. Last week on the 11th. The final report shows a project cost of $310 million and a benefit cost ratio of 2.1. The benefit cost ratio of 2.1 is important in that demonstrates a solid federal interest in the project. That is very good news for us. If the benefit cost ratio were 1 or lower, there would be no project. If the higher it is, the better chance we have at getting federal funding. So we have not done a whole lot in terms of analyzing the financial aspect of this project going forward. Is mainly we want to get through the study and then we'll deal with that later. But looking ahead to cost sharing, should the project proceed to construction, the Corps of Engineers would fund 65% of the total project cost. The city and the state would split 35%. We eventually have to get into an agreement with the state, but we were expecting that the state share would be 70%, in the city 30% of the remaining 35%. So some really quick math, Woodland's local share is in the neighborhood of $30 to $32 million, plus or minus. This is the This slide is actually the Corps' schedule that was submitted for their presentation to the Office of Management and Budget and the ASA's office in the Pentagon coming up very soon. This is the first time that we've ever seen an actual potential schedule that shows construction. So that's actually really good news. The first item is the transmittal of the final study that was sent last week to headquarters. The chief's report is expected by the end of June 2021, and this is the completion of the study. So we are on track to achieving that on schedule. The next step after that is obtaining congressional authorization. We are targeting a 2022 Water Resources Development Act. Typically Congress does this about every other year, and they just did one in 2020, so the next one should be in 2022. After that happens, we can work on signing a design agreement between the Corps of Engineers, DWR, and the city to start design and then design for 2 years. Once the first project package is ready to go, we could potentially initiate construction as early as 2025. And if everything works out well, we would complete construction in 2028. This is probably a bit of an optimistic schedule. It's very dependent on federal funding and state funding coming in when the money's needed. It could quite likely happen that this does slip a few years, but it's very good news that we're actually at the point now with the project in the schedule that there actually is a schedule that shows construction. That was my last slide. With that, I can take any questions. Again, real quickly, this is a picture of Lower Cache Creek on the same day, February 27, when it did overtop. This picture I took looking downstream from County Road 102 just before it overtopped. So it's about 6 inches below overtopping at that point. I can take any questions, and we do have our team online that if there's any questions that we need them to answer, they are also available.
Okay, Council, we have council comment and then public comment. So we begin with council comment.
You start with the public comment first.
That's your wish. Everybody else agreed? All right, Madam Clerk, you've got some people who wish to speak tonight.
I see 2 hands that are raised.
All right, well, please invite those people into our meeting so we can hear their points.
Jay? Jay, can you hear me?
Yeah, caller ending in 2364, you can unmute to speak.
Okay, I've asked them to unmute.
Timothy, you are also available to speak. I'm going to promote you right now so you can share your screen.
Am I up?
Yes, Timothy, you're on.
Okay. All right. Greetings, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm speaking on behalf of the Yolo County Taxpayers Association. Regarding the latest flood wall proposal, we would like to remind you of Measure S, passed in March of 2004, which directed that no such project should be implemented short of a positive vote by the people of Woodland. Measure S was endorsed by the Taxpayers Association at the time. The voters rejected the previous flood wall because it divided Woodland. It was not regional. The YCTA has familiarized itself with the current proposal, Alternative 2A, and deem it substantially similar to the previous proposed flood wall. For the city to move forward with this project without a public vote would be a violation of Measure S. We also have reservations about the actual costs, current and future, relative to this project. What are the total costs? What is the portion funded locally and how? Further, the community is unaware of the risks that come with this, liability to damaged homeowners, increased flood risk, schism in the community. We also believe the city should not advance a project that would negatively impact what is to be considered a minority community, namely the residents and farmers of the northern side of the proposed flood wall. One such impact would be that their ability to get cost-effective loans would be hindered and or put at risk significantly. Measure G that would have extended the sales tax to fund the local share of floodwall 1 was rejected by the voters in March of 2002. A smaller portion of woodland with a smaller portion of woodland in the floodplain than before, there may be even less interest in the entire community funding a floodwall. We believe that cleaning out and otherwise maintaining the existing Cache Creek levee, example with some features that are outlined in Alternative 6B, would be a more viable option with less negative impacts on all parties. This would be a regional project consistent with Measure S. And I don't know if you can see the screen here, but this is the previous flood wall. And this is the current flood wall. It runs on almost the same lines, and that is why, in large part, we think this needs to go to the community for a vote. Mr. Bush made an argument, and if the city is convinced that it's a very convincing argument, then they should have no problem passing it with the voters, but we do think it should go to the voters as consistent with Measure S, being a regional project in the context of the city of Woodland and the surrounding immediate areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blank.
So the caller ending in 2364, if you do *6, you're ready to speak.
I beg your pardon?
You're ready.
We can hear you.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes. My name's Sally Oliver. I'm one of those landowners that you lightly land on, as will be the plan will affect. I own 40 acres of certified organic Class 1 soil that will be destroyed by the diagonal flood wall that is part of the project, of which Tim Bush did not speak to. I tried to connect with 3 of the new members, and one came out to the ranch today to observe the reality of it. I spoke with the Woodland mayor, and he was to contact Cullen Muller, who farms my 40 acres. If you vote to certify the EIR tonight, you will certify a document that contains a lie. The EIR states the diagonal levee will take 17 acres out of agricultural production, which is not true. It will take out 40 acres. The 17th, and my livelihood, by the way, the 17-acre site in the EIR taken by the levee will divide the land, leaving 11.5 acres on each side of that levee. One of those has no water well, because you isolated my ag well. So that levee will be out of ag production. That's at 17 and 11.5 add up to 28 acres out of 40 acres I cannot farm. That leaves only 11.5 on the other side of the levee, which is economically extremely difficult, if impossible, to farm. So you have the project with the diagonal levee west of County Road 98, destroys my income and takes the extremely valuable land out of Yolo County. We are in the Williamson Act too, and it destroys that, and that has implications. The EIR fails to address the above facts, so it should not be certified. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver.
Do you have any questions?
We have no questions.
I don't know why.
Our job here is to listen, not to interact.
Hey, this is Tim Bush. I would like to comment real quickly. We did receive some late comments from Sally and her family yesterday, today. And we did get these comments on the continued farmability of land and irrigation on the other side of the levee. And it is contemplated in the EIR that it is part of the real estate process that if and it could be more than one property this happens on, is that if through construction of the levee, we kind of sever the ability to irrigate the other side, the project would include drilling a new well on the other side and making the irrigation system whole again. That is included in the real estate portion of the EIR and the overall project formulation.
It wasn't to begin with. So do you farm, Tim?
No, but I have family members that do.
Do you live with the economics of farming in Yolo County or California? No. You have no idea what you are doing.
Okay, Ms. Oliver. Thank you. You've had
I'm so...
please turn off the speaker. Thank you. We've taken the input. We've given some response. Is there any other additional comments this evening, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Steller, I do have 2 emails to read.
Please proceed to read them.
Thank you. My name is Alex Despard. I recommend that the City Council not approve the Woodland Flood Risk Reduction Project. It is clear from repeated motions that the City Council was not allowed time to review comments to the final EIR. The Council cannot approve a project of this enormity without full review. Below are examples in the final EIR containing obvious incorrect statements. Response to letter L1, page 4 through 8 of the Woodland Flood Risk Management Plan, final EIR, January 2021. Statement. Furthermore, removal of the 17 acres of land from existing Williamson Act contracts would not affect the productivity of the soils or the land on either side of the proposed levee within the subject parcel. This statement is incorrect. The proposed levee is 6 to 14 feet tall, 60 to 100 feet wide, and bisects the property. How can you get well water to the land on the opposite side of the levee? How can you prepare the land for crops? How can you keep this land's organic certification with a levee built across the property? In corrections and revisions to the draft DIR, section 3.6, page 7 to 3, agricultural and forestry resources of the Woodland Flood Risk Management Plan, final EIR, January 2021. Statement, unlike a highway project or housing project, which would promote urbanization in the area, the proposed project is not a use that would induce further conversion of existing farmland to non-agricultural uses. This statement is incorrect. By building this flood wall, the City of Woodland is promoting development and urbanization, which will continue to increase conversion of existing farmland to non-agricultural use. Yolo County has experienced a 6% decrease in agricultural lands. The proposed project would result in the conversion of 192 acres of prime and unique farmland to non-agricultural uses. This would result in an incremental contribution to a cumulative effect that is unpredictable and would ultimately intensify global warming and climate change. Statement 17, landowner concerns, page 31 in the draft EIR 06 app ELCCFS real estate plan. Statement, the project has received widespread support from the community. However, the attitudes of the landowners who will be directly affected by its construction are not known. The non-federal sponsor is confident that they will be able to acquire the right-of-way required for the project. This statement is incorrect. Based on numerous negative comments the city has received and responded to in the final EIR, this statement needs to be corrected. Our family's 40 acres of prime organic farmland will be destroyed by this project. The city's effort to promote development will result in the loss of yet another farming family and 40 acres of organic farmland. That's the end of that one. And the next one is Betsy Spalding. One of the impacts in the draft environmental impact report, impact AG-2 for the Woodland Flood Risk Project, addresses taking 17 acres as part of the footprint for the flood wall. The 17 acres is 42% of an organic farm, and the flood wall would run through parcels are currently under Williamson Act contract, WAC, WAC, WAC protection. The acquisition of land protected by the Williamson Act for the purpose of public improvements has been brought up as a conflict by both the farmers and Yolo County Senior Planner. The city acknowledges that the WAC requires that no public agencies can locate public improvement within an agricultural reserve as per California Government Code Section 51292. However, their justification is California Government Code 51293, which states that the location/construction of improvements such as flood control works are acceptable if they are determined to be compatible with or enhance land within an agricultural preserve. Counterpoint, none of the below listed impacts of the proposed flood wall will be compatible or enhance the farmland adjacent to the wall and within the WAC agricultural preserve, and therefore the flood wall in that location/construction does not comply with California Government Code 51293, Section 3. Flood wall impacts, increased deposition of mercury and methyl mercury laden sediment due to increased flood depths, dividing one farm parcel in two by a flood wall, contaminating and compacting the prime organic farm soil caused by construction of the flood wall. The city states in response to letter L1-3 that the 17 acres under WAC represents a small portion, 0.004% of all WAC lands in Yolo County. They believe this small proportion satisfies California Government Code Section 51295, which allows them to condemn or acquire land and cancel a contract when only portion of the land is being taken or acquired. They also state that removal of the 17 acres from WAC is not expected to be a threat or cancellation to other WAC contracts in the project area or the county. Counterpoint, the footprint of the flood wall will take up 42%, 17 over 40 acres of the Oliver farm, 42% by a sizable portion of a family farm, could result in the loss of WAC protection for both of the adjacent parcels, 140 acres. In summary, the DEIR should return to investigating alternatives to the flood wall number 2, find other solutions that could 1, supply the 200-year flood protection for Woodland from Cache Creek, 2, provide protection and conservation of agricultural land, and 3, protect water quality by managing mercury-laden sediment from Cache Creek in the Cache Creek CCSB. I'm sorry, that's the end.
And who was the writer of that letter, please?
Betsy Spalding, Spaulding.
Thank you. All right, are there any further comments?
No.
All right, if that's the case, we'll return to the council for questions of staff. Any member of the council wish to ask questions on this item?
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Bush.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Mr. Bush, the council members have received various letters in the last few days. I think you were copied on most of them, in particular the Farm Bureau and the Taxpayers Association, which have specific areas of concern that many of the speakers have spoken of tonight. Did you answer those questions in your presentation? Is that what I heard you say?
I answered the majority of them in the presentation. Both the Yolo County Taxpayers Association and the Farm Bureau letter referenced what was called Alternative 6B a few years back. In that Alternative 6B was raised in place of the existing Cache Creek levies. And that alternative was screened out of federal consideration relatively early on, mainly because of the incredibly high cost of that alternative. So that alternative cost was somewhere in the neighborhood of $650 to $700 million, mainly because it's a much longer levee project to build it along the meandering creek itself. And then also the incredibly high environmental cost of destroying one of the last remaining riparian habitats that California has. So that project alternative had a cost that was more than 2 times, or really almost 2.5 times the cost of the alternative we have. The only way that an alternative would ever be constructed is if the city did that ourselves without federal or state involvement. I don't think we were interested in spending that much money. So that alternative is a non-starter. some of the other comments in their Farm Bureau letter, those are similar comments that were raised in their original comment letter on the draft EIR and over the last 5 to 10 years of the project being under development. So all of those comments have been answered in the EIR and in previous answering of those comments.
Thank you. A further question. Many of the letter writers and the comments that we received were simply requesting another 30 days to respond. Were you given any kind of indication what, if anything, would be different about their responses if they were given additional time? And follow up to that, what harm is there in it giving another couple weeks?
Sure, I can answer that question. So under the CEQA process, we established a comment period. The comment period is when people have the opportunity to comment on the project. We had a 144-day long comment period, much longer than the 45 days that is required. So under CEQA, after the comments are received, the lead agency, which in this case is the city, we respond to those comments, but there is no provision under CEQA to have responses to the comment responses. So really delaying certification doesn't really accomplish anything, in that under the CEQA process, there's not a provision to go back and revisit the comments and the responses. There's a one-time through it and we're done, essentially. So I don't see any benefit to delaying, really, because the comments and responses have been completed. We fully complied with the CEQA laws. There is a bit of a drawback to pushing it back, in that now that the final study and environmental impact statement have been transmitted to headquarters, in the next few weeks, the Corps headquarters will schedule what they call a milestone meeting, where they will review the final feasibility study and the final environmental federal document, and have a meeting internally to decide to go forward to actually successfully completing the study. At those meetings, they request the non-federal sponsors to show that they support their efforts. The EIR is a joint document between the city and the state. The city, as you may recall, the city and the state are sharing 50-50 in the cost of preparing the EIR. Certification of the EIR sends a very strong message to headquarters in Washington, D.C., that both the city and the state do support this effort. If we delayed 30 days, we will quite likely miss that meeting.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Additional questions of staff? Any member of the council wish to comment?
Mr. Mayor, I have just a comment on this item. And I do want to acknowledge the individuals and the companies and the agencies who forwarded their concerns about this feasibility study, specifically Mr. and Mrs. Lee, the Farm Bureau, the Taxpayers Association. And I had a lovely conversation with Sally Oliver, and I appreciate their comments. I have read their concerns. I've read all their letters, and I have considered what they have said. That's why I wanted to have Mr. Bush clarify what, if anything, would be added if there was a delay, and whether or not all their considerations were considered, requests were considered. But I think that the city, as you know, Mr. Mayor, is committed to provide protection for the good of all and not just a few. As a city, we need to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. Anybody else wish to comment? Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
I can unmute there. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor Stallard. I want to echo what Councilmember Landsberg said. I too read the letters. I went and I spoke with Ms. Oliver, and I can appreciate the concerns that are out there, and I appreciate what the city has prepared for us, and I was also curious to know what the timeline was. So I do appreciate Mr. Bush answering providing those responses and helping us with those answers. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. And as my colleagues have stated, we have received several comments from various community members regarding this issue. And it is a difficult issue to address. I understand Miss Oliver's family situation and her land and the value that we have for agriculture in our community. And I feel somehow torn that we are looking at perhaps affecting a family's income and their livelihood. And I understand that. And I feel oops, am I still there?
Yes, you are.
And I'm sorry, my screen went blank. So my concerns, I've listened and read all the concerns that have been addressed to us. And I think it's a difficult situation for us to have to deal with. But I agree with my colleagues who say that we want to respect the benefits for the entire community as well. And so I think it's a difficult situation for those who are directly impacted by the land. And I've asked those questions, and I understand that it's a difficult situation when it's your land that might be in that floodplain and it's your family history. So I have heard the concerns, and I appreciate them sharing those concerns, and thank them for their time and their efforts.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. Councilmember Vega, do you wish to add any thoughts?
Stallard, thank you. So I also want to say thank you to all of the community members that have reached out to educate council and me in particular on this issue and the impacts to their property. I took an opportunity to drive through all of the neighborhoods that are currently impacted by potential flooding, who have to pay that flood insurance, and just contemplated on what the impact would be positive to this community member should this flood mitigation be deployed and be in place. So I want to acknowledge all of the households that are currently being impacted by not having a flood solution in place, and understand the huge change it would be to their neighborhoods should this flood plan, our flood mitigation plan, move forward. So again, that does not, I'm definitely torn. Councilmember Fernandez, you kind of said something that has resonated with me. This is a tough decision. Thinking about Miss Oliver's farm and her livelihood is not something that I've taken lightly. Additionally, the owners that have property that are going to be impacted, that is something that weighs heavily on me and something that I have taken into consideration. That's beyond, Mayor Stallard. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all of you had a chance to speak. I really can't add much to the comments that I've heard shared already. I tend to think a lot about the families that they're paying all that money out in flood insurance every year. Nobody knows the total amount or the exact amount of houses. But if you have a federally insured mortgage, you have to have flood insurance. When this problem first arose, annual flood insurance was something like $1,200. Now it's many times that, mostly because of flood experience. And that's millions of dollars going out of our community every year for something that, these people should not have to support. So that's what I weigh, the impact on potentially 1,000 homeowners. All of those, yes, we'll take it. Excuse me, I have heard we have one more public comment. We'll take it in just a moment. It's just not possible to solve the flood problem for 100% of the people. The best you can do is try to ameliorate the impacts. And I think we have more potential for doing more to ameliorate the impacts, and we can if we can get to the next stage of the process. So I support the recommendations as presented tonight. Now, here we have one more public comment. Without objection from the council, we'll go ahead and hear it. Jay, can you play it, please? Or invite the person into the meeting.
Hi, my name's Kathy Molinex, and I have two comments. One is that most of the people being affected can't even vote for the city council. They're in the county, and so the people sitting here making the decision, they couldn't even determine who those people were. And that's comment number one. And the second comment is a lot of the properties you're looking to protect knowingly built in a floodplain. And meanwhile, these farms that have been in production for hundreds of years are being destroyed. And that's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Molinex. I appreciate it. All right, we've had our public comment is over now. We've had council discussion and comment. We're ready to proceed as the council sees fit.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the recommendation made by staff to adopt the EIR as written and the attending documents to go with it.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. Is there a second to Mr. Landsberg's motion?
Seconded by Council Member Vega.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega, for seconding the motion. So we have a motion by Member Landsberg, seconded by Member Vega. Is there further discussion before we proceed to a roll call? Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
And Mayor Stallard?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you to all those who submitted written comments, those who called in and shared their feelings. They will not be ignored. All right. Council has acted on item 27. That concludes the item tonight. And that moves us on to our remaining two items. Item 28 is the mid-year budget update. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Kim McKinney, Finance Officer, will walk you through a mid-year budget update. And as she's getting situated, again, provide a little context for the council. As part of your annual budget process, staff presents to the council midway through the budget year, how we're trending, how we're tracking relative to the budget that was adopted in the prior June. So this year, we are presenting to the council in February, as is tradition, how we're trending relative to both revenues and expenditures. And if you recall, certainly last year's budget process was disrupted a bit, as the rest of our lives were with the pandemic. And we were forced to present to the council some difficult budget decisions in a context where we had very little sort of knowledge or experience on what to expect or predict relative to economic impacts and how that would translate to ultimately fiscal impacts to our city operation. So the staff presented and ultimately the council adopted as part of their budget, a budget balancing plan that consisted of a variety of measures to allow us to respond throughout the year as we learn more in terms of revenues as well as costs. With the adopted budget, the council did approve the tier 1 cuts. There was tier 2 and tier 3 cuts also presented for subsequent budget balancing measures should we be in a position throughout the year to need to curtail our spending and maintain a balanced budget through this year. We implemented that first tier of reduction measures with relative minimal sort of impacts to cost for service at the time. And tiers 2 and 3 were deferred until September or even mid-year. And it's our pleasure to report that given the way our revenues, particularly our sales tax, has performed, as well as our development activity, it's translated to a situation where we're not in a position to present to the council as part of this mid-year budget the need to activate additional budget reductions to maintain a balanced budget. With respect to the first tier reduction measures, questions have come up in my conversations with council around, will we be revisiting the need to potentially fund those reduction measures that were adopted as part of the budget? And the response to that is we will be considering those budget reductions in the context of next year's budget, which we will initiate conversation with the council as part of our typical budget process in April, where we conduct the spring budget workshop. So we'll provide some more detail around how we're projecting for not just next year, but the next 5 years as part of that spring budget workshop, and welcome the council's feedback on priority expenditures for next year in that context. So with that, Kim McKinney, I will request to sort of walk the council through the mid-year budget update. There's a companion budget presentation immediately after this that is a set of actions necessary to amend the current budget year in response to where we landed with the adopted budget and additional expenditures that were needed to respond to unexpected or expenditures that were not originally built into the budget as presented and adopted in June, but also to respond to some progress on projects, particularly in the Spring Lake area. Now that we have seen those projects completed, need to reimburse the developers that funded those. So first part of the presentation, looks like Kim is ready to walk you through. And again, welcome the council's input and feedback on the mid-year budget, and then ultimately the appropriations being requested this evening.
Hi, good evening, council. My name is Kim McKinney. I'm finance officer, and the city manager covered a lot of information about the budget and how we started the process this year and the information that we had or didn't have when we prepared the budget that was adopted by council in June. So the information that we have tonight is for the first 6 months of the fiscal year 2021, which is through December 31st, 2020. We'll go through a couple of charts here and just cover a few of the highlights that were covered in detail in the staff report that was presented. But this first table covers revenues for the city. Our funds, we have over 100 different funds in the city that are categorized into different types of funds that are shown here, and they all have different types of revenues that are collected in different ways throughout the year. So it's not alarming that the percent collected through the year, it doesn't match the 50% that we've made it through the fiscal year. Most funds are trending in the ways that we would expect them to. The general fund we'll cover in more detail in a couple of slides. In the, I guess just point out in here, the Spring Lake and development and capital funds are doing well this year, in particular related to higher than expected residential activity that has been strong through the first 6 months of the year. So far we've collected just under $68 million through December of this year. Those same types of funds that we covered here, this is showing their expenditures through the first 6 months of the year. So we've spent almost $85 million this year. And again, there's different types of funds spend their money in different ways. I will just highlight in here this Spring Lake that seems like a high percent there. The Spring Lake funds are the capital funds that are specific for projects that are built out in the Spring Lake specific plan area. They're paid for primarily by either development impact fees specifically from Spring Lake, which we call SLIF, or from bond proceeds for bonds that we've already issued and have money available to build these projects. And so we will be asking for a budget correction in the next staff report to account for projects that are being built and paid for out of bond proceeds there. The rest of the fund categories are for the most part, trending what we would expect. The development and capital line items is usually fairly low. Those are large capital projects for the most part in those categories that can take lengthy time to complete and therefore sometimes have large budgets that are expended over time. This chart here is the same expenditures, but instead of broken down by fund type, it's broken down by the different categories or departments that we have in the city. And when it's broken down this way, you can see in a lot of cases, we hover around the 50% mark for halfway through the year of what's been spent, with the exception of public works, primarily because of some large items that are recorded at the end of the fiscal year that are accounting related. And then again, the capital improvements. And in the staff report and the attachments, there was a big table of all of the capital projects that are included in the budget this year, or the majority of them, and what their budgets are and how much has been spent and what is remaining, so that you can see in detail how we're doing with those categories and what projects, for example, some ASR wells and road projects that have very large budgets but have not yet spent a significant amount of money, that tend to lead to these low percentages through the year. So again, that's our $85 million on a all city basis. So here's the general fund, and this is focused on revenues specifically in the general fund, and the categories, or the major categories, how we classify our revenues. When we passed the budget earlier this year, it was $53.9 million was our expected budget. There has been some amendments that have happened since the beginning of the year, and we've collected just under $13.3 million so far this year. With the mid-year update, we do a projection on where we think revenues are going to end this current fiscal year. And so this column here is showing that we're expecting the end of the year with about $57.4 million in revenue, which is a significant improvement over the current amended budget of 54.2. This last column over here shows what's contributing to that better than expected revenue. A small amount in property taxes. We've received very little property tax to date through the end of December. We get our property taxes from the county. The first installment comes in January each year, so we never have revenues before January. We do get information from the county assessor's office early in the fiscal year that says what the changed in assessed values are for the year, and we apply those to the revenues that we have received last year. And so the assessed value growth was a little bit higher than what we had anticipated when we did the budget, so it's contributing to a positive budget variance there. The biggest contributor here is the positive variance in sales taxes. So this sales tax line item includes what we call a Bradley-Byrne sales tax, which is the 1% general sales tax in the state that we keep here in Woodland. Also included in that number is the Measure J sales taxes, which is our quarter-cent sales tax, and Measure F, the half-cent sales tax. All are included in this $21.7 million budget here. All three of those sales tax categories are expected to do better than budget. $1.6 million of this $2.1 million is specifically for the Bradley-Byrnes, and is the amount that would be staying in the general fund that isn't specifically set aside for another reason. About $215,000 of that is Measure J money, which would be included in the Measure J fund balance and spending plans. And then about $400,000 is Measure F, which gets collected into the general fund through this revenue line item and then transferred out as an expense to another fund where we spend it on specific categories or projects or items that are approved by council. So we'll see that expenditure come up again in a few minutes. This other taxes line item is a large reduction in the budget that we're looking at, and that's primarily related to transient occupancy taxes at our hotels, which are particularly affected by the restrictions related to the COVID-19 situation. The budget was already reduced when we adopted it, but given the activity that we've seen so far in forecasting, we're downgrading that even further. The license and permit category here, as I mentioned previously, there's strong development activity happening in the city, particularly in the Spring Lake area. And as a result of that, we are projecting to be collecting almost or just over $600,000 more in development related permits and licenses through the end of this current fiscal year. And sort of in the mixed bag of good and less good news here in the service charges line item. Again, because of COVID, we've been limited in the amount of programming that we could offer, particularly in the community services department. And this line item is primarily revenue that's collected from participants in those activities. So we again had lowered that expectation when we adopted the budget, but again needs to be revised further. This intergovernmental line here shows a big variance, a big positive variance. That's because the city received $750,000 in CARES Act money allocated from the state as pass-through from the federal government. We were not aware of or expecting that money when we adopted the budget. It became, we became aware of that in July and August this year. And so this line item has a positive variance almost entirely because of that $750,000 that we have received to help cover the costs that we incurred related to the pandemic.
Kim?
Yes.
Kim, need to interrupt you for a minute. Can I have a motion to extend the meeting to 9:15, please?
Motion by Landsberg to extend the meeting by 15 minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Landsberg, second by Fernandez. Roll call, please. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Councilmember Fernandez?
Yeah, aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Yes, if you get me some coffee.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
Mayor Stallard?
Aye. Please continue, Kim. Appreciate it if it can conclude soon.
Yes. And this final, the miscellaneous line item includes a large $850,000 strike team reimbursement related to our fire crews that have gone out on strike team responses this year, which again wasn't known during budget preparation, and also comes with additional expenditures, which we will get to right now. So this is again limited to the general fund and the budget. The amended budget here, which includes the adopted budget from June and anything that any action that council has taken since that time, which primarily includes carryover of unexpended money from the prior year of the $56 million. The categories where we're expecting to end the year here, you can see we're projecting to be over budget about $1.3 million. A large component of that is in the personnel line item, although it says $240,000 over budget, there's significant expenditures related to the strike team overtime included in there, about $650,000. In the supplies and services line item here, there are a number of projects or efforts that have been identified or corrections that need to be made to the budget that are contributing to this over unfavorable variance here. And then the largest one at the bottom, the operating transfers category. A component of the money we get back for strike teams relates to costs for maintaining the equipment that gets sent out with the strike team. And the equipment is maintained in a fund outside the general fund. So we put the money in this transfers category. And finally, as I mentioned before, we're expecting better than budgeted Measure F revenues, and we receive those into the general fund and then transfer them out. And so because the revenue is bigger, the expense also needs to be bigger to transfer it out. And the next agenda item that we'll get to in a minute is we'll be asking for some budget adjustments to account for some of these items that I just discussed. These are those same revenue, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, these are the same expenditures broken down by department rather than by category. And same thing here, just in the fire line item is $850,000 related to the strike team is a big contributing factor to that overage. And then in the non-departmental category relates those transfers that I talked about earlier with Measure F. And we also have some big negative budgets. When we set the budget up there, we assume some salary savings from employee concessions and from vacancies throughout the year. So there's a negative budget that won't have expenditures in there. The savings happen actually within the departments instead of that line item. So it is kind of a confusing situation that makes it look like we have an over budget situation in that particular department. So
bless you, Kim. Our eyes are glazing over.
I know. Okay. So punchline, what this means for the general fund mid-year projection. We begin the year with a $17.3 million fund balance, which when we did the budget, we were expecting $13.3 million. The increased revenues, the increased expenditures here, as well as some of the remaining one-time money that was set aside, shows that we're expecting an unreserved fund balance in the general fund of $17.1 million or 33%. We'll be covering more detail the general fund reserves and how those have helped us in the past and what other needs that are still remain to be part of that general fund, as well as balancing the 5-year forecast when we come up to the fiscal year 22 budget workshop in the next month or so. So that was it for the mid-year budget update. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them. I can quickly go on to the next one with the adjustments that we're requesting.
Any questions from the council about the report?
And what do you attribute the increase to?
The increased
revenue.
Yeah, the fund balance increase this year is primarily the better than expected revenues, and also fiscal year 20 ended up a little bit better than we thought, in part because revenues were a little better. We spent less money, and also we didn't do some of the large expenditures, in particular a $1 million transfer from the general fund for a fire station set aside we didn't do. So that helped obviously improve the fund balance situation.
So are you going to discuss the in the next item what we do about the employees who took a hit and how we can pay them back?
No. So the next budget is actually just asking for adjustments or corrections. So the employee groups all did agree to concessions that were included in we expected some savings in the budget, and we did get contributions from all of the groups. Several of the groups had language in their side letters tied to revenue performance, and to the extent that our revenues did better than we expected, their concessions would cease. And that is the case with several of the groups, that their concessions were in place through the end of December. The citywide all funds received savings as a result of that, and many of those groups stopped with their concessions beginning in January. There are a couple that are still continuing with their concessions who had different language included in their side letters. But we don't have anything included in the next one related specifically to concessions.
And that was done automatically because we met the numbers, correct?
Right. And it was a $14.1 million threshold for Bradley Burns, and we met that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that our employees got taken care of.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? If not, we'll move on to the adjustments necessary, and this is the last item on our agenda tonight. Please proceed.
Okay, very quickly. When we do but obviously things come up throughout the year that need to be adjusted in the budget, things that we didn't know about or need correction. So there's a pretty detailed explanation in the staff report. This slide just summarizes the amounts by fund that we're asking for. It's $19.6 million, which is a large amount. The majority of that $19 million relates to a $14 million adjustment in Spring Lake Capital, and that's specifically for reimbursements to developers who have been building projects, and we have already on hand bond proceeds to pay for those projects. We just need to appropriate the money in the budget, so we won't be requesting or adding money or charging anybody anything. It's just an appropriation in there. Also, a large amount included here is related to successor agency, a loan payment that we've received And the general fund, $1.7 million, a large component of that is the $850,000 related to the strike team, as well as additional transfers of almost $400,000 for Measure F, and a few other corrections that are included in the staff report related to some contract staffing needs, et cetera, in the general fund. And a lot of that is offset by additional revenues, as many of these items in here are offset by either additional revenues or reserves that we had specifically set aside for these items. Included in the staff report, in addition to the specific line item adjustments, are some changes to authorized positions. So when the council adopts a budget in the summer, there's an attachment to it that authorizes a list specifically of which positions are approved to be filled in the budget. So to the extent that we need to make changes to those throughout the year, it does require council's approval. The majority of these changes are related to the vacancy we have at the city at the assistant city manager level. So when we did the budget, we left that in as a position pending time and additional information and implementation of a plan. So there's been some discussion about how to backfill that vacancy at the assistant city manager level. And so included in here is a deletion and addition of several positions that, so in total doesn't change overall authorized positions in the city, but does change which ones. So we'd be removing authorization for the assistant city manager position, authorizing an administrative services director. I'm including on here the communications manager that was authorized, but it was part of this bigger plan. Reauthorizing a community development director, and which is expected to also fulfill the city engineer role, and therefore we would not need to backfill that position. And then some reorganization within the finance department to fulfill some identified needs in that area results in the reduction of one position and addition of another. And a conservation coordinator position that is vacant is being suggested for deletion because that group has reorganized and moved into another department. So other areas of the department are covering some of those needs. And then finally, some reclassification of engineering, and then in public works, the reclassification of leadership in the maintenance roles of the road crew is also included in here. So in total, we're requesting addition of 5 full-time equivalent positions, but also, 6, and then requesting deletion of also 6 so that the total authorized FTEs remain the same. On here is everything that's in your staff reports. That's already just, I know it's tiny, but details of all the items that are being recommended by staff for approval with the budget. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Kim. Council members, are there questions of Kim on the mid-year adjustments?
Kim,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Council member Vega, go ahead first.
Okay. So Kim, can you go back to the funds? I have a questions about the Spring Lake specific. So these additions, is this going to mean an increase in the taxes that the payers on Spring Lake pay?
No. The taxes that the Spring Lake homeowners pay is to pay debt service on bonds, on the bonds that generated the money that is used to build these projects. So we already have these $14 million. It doesn't change anything for the homeowners in Spring Lake.
Okay, and is that the case for the LNL also?
That's also the case with the LNL, that this is just a correction of some items in the budget there, but it won't change and can't change their assessments for this year. And right.
Okay. Okay. And then another question on the FTE, slide. So it's as far as FTEs, it's neutral. Is it budget neutral also? Are these changes budget neutral?
I'm sorry. Yes, I should have mentioned that. Yes, we aren't requesting any additional appropriations. All these changes are accommodated within the existing budget.
Okay. That's it, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Actually, Kimberly just answered my question. I was also going to ask about it, whether or not the FTE was the budget neutral. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Landsberg.
That's the same question I had. So it was handled.
Hey, you can tell where our heads are.
On the same plane, aren't we?
That's what we call unity. It's a good thing. Councilmember Fernandez, any comments or questions? None? All right. Sounds like everybody's been satisfied with the presentation tonight. City Manager Hyatt, anything you want to add before we go to adjournment?
No, just again, reiterate, we'll be talking budget for the next 4 months straight. So look forward to sort of launching into next year's budget as part of the workshop in April. So, but for now, we'll relish in some positive news and better than projected revenues. But, you know, the future is still cloudy to some degree. But yeah, look forward to working with you on building next year's budget.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kimberly and the team for the work to put this together for us.
Need a motion?
Okay, pardon me?
There's a motion?
There's no motion.
Motion for the resolution?
There's a resolution.
Oh, thank you. Let's have a motion then. Is that a motion, Rich, you were offering? Sorry.
Somebody else. Let somebody else do the motion.
All right. Councilman Fernandez makes the motion to approve the resolution. Who is seconding?
Councilmember Vega, second.
Pro Tem Vega is seconding the resolution. Thank you for correcting my oversight, Rich. Please, further discussion? Public comment? There being none, Clerk Gonzalez, please call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye, good night.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
And Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
We are at adjournment. We do have 2 memorial adjournments tonight. One is our friend Angie Gonzalez, who passed away, Rick Gonzalez's widow. Wonderful woman. I worked with him for years in their downtown hair salon, raised 4 great sons. One of them became a teacher in Davis, another and head of the Concilio, and another became the police chief of Davis. And I don't know about the other 2, but I'm sure they were great as well. So we are happy to acknowledge a very successful life. Sorry to regret her passing. We also want to adjourn in memory of Glenn Hefner. Tanny, we'd like to say a few words about Glenn.
Sure. Glenn was he was a local business owner at one time. He was a scholar. He was wonderful at trivia, and he really enjoyed the trivia that was happening downtown. And he will very much be missed. He raised a wonderful family here in town, and he and his wife Chris really have contributed a lot to our community, and he will be greatly missed.
Thank you, Tanya. In addition to memorial recognition for both Angie Gonzalez and Glenn Hefner, I can't let this meeting end on the eve practically of our 150th celebration without recognizing that another legend is moving along, and that's again the editor of the Daily Democrat, Jim Smith. After 27 years in the saddle, he is concluding his service at the paper at the end of this month. So I presume this is the last meeting he's covering for the Daily Democrat. And we want to thank Jim for recording the history of Woodland for so many years. Literally, his legacy will live on in the pages of the Democrat, however electronic it has become. But we want to thank Jim for his steadfastness to our community over such a long tenure. With that, I think we've concluded our business tonight. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And thank you, staff. A lot of work.
Thank you.